Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Click R3 number 15. I'm much better now than I was last time, and now Ryan is under the weather. So now he's gonna power through the episode this time.
Got my cough drops. I'm good to go.
There it is. The bag of cough drop. Wait, hold on. What cough drops are those?
This is Top Care Health.
Oh wow. That sounds professional. I just got like the Halls at Walmart that were on like the bottom shelf.
This bag is probably 2 years old, but it doesn't expire until 2026. So we're good.
Okay. You didn't go out and just get new ones. You just
I'm just happy.
Oh wow. Okay. So, wow. I don't know what the expiration is on like cough. Like that could be a bag from 2020 for all you know right now.
I don't know. Yeah, like I've had them for a while. I know that much. So
those could be some pre-pandemic cough drops.
They were from my old apartment, so I moved with them. So
oh wow, they traveled even.
At least 2 years.
Wow, they've seen some things.
They sure did.
Hey, well, still Ryan decided to push through. Otherwise, though, how you doing, Ryan?
Doing all right. I can't let you like one up me if you're gonna sound like you're on the verge of death. Which congratulations, by the way, on making it. So
yeah, I did. I made it.
Yeah,
I made it.
I can't let you. I can't let you do that, and then I'm over here with like a sore throat, and I call it off. No, not happening.
You know, it's the nice. When I was younger, I always thought, you know, when I get old and if I get sick for a day, I'll just play video games all day. That was like my thought. I was like, that's the excuse. People can't have me do stuff if I'm sick. Like if I have a sore throat, I'll just be like, I can't do that. I got to play video games all day. Doesn't work. You still have to do stuff all day. Does not work.
Well, here in Buffalo, it's like going to be, I think it's going to be a snow day tomorrow for like a lot of, not just schools, but places of work as well.
Oh, hold on. How do you get a snow day in Buffalo? Here in like Maryland, if it snows 2 inches, it's like the apocalypse outside. People can't believe it. It's like it's over. So schools get canceled. Like schools will get, I think tomorrow's 2-hour delay because it's too cold out.
Yeah, well, we got it's that lake effect snow for us. So like the South towns, I'm a little bit further north. South gets hit like the worst. That's where you hear like all the like sort of Buffalo horror stories. But
is it like crazy snow?
Well, I don't know what it looks like now, but like it's been snowing all day, and it's going to be pretty damn like I don't know if it's like snowfall, but it's just like it's going to go below 0 tonight, so it's going to be really cold.
Oh,
yeah, really cold.
I'm just envisioning like up in Buffalo. I'm envisioning like a foot of snow or something crazy.
A foot of snow? That's like There's one of those things where like a local Buffalo person would be like, "Oh, a foot of snow, give me 17 feet. I can take anything." You know?
I don't care where you are. Shoveling that much snow is not fun. I annoyed having to shovel a couple inches of snow.
Yeah, if I get 3 inches, I'm pretty pissed off. So I live here.
Yeah. Well, you can huddle in your house for a while, right?
That's the idea. That's the idea.
Just make some memory card videos. You're good to go.
I might.
Those look fun. I know you just do the PS2 ones, but I've thought about that. Like, what if I just got a bag of GameCube memory cards and just saw what was on there?
I'd love to do. I mean, I did PS1 once and then PS2. This is the third time for PS2. GameCube is super fun though. Should definitely do it.
The whole grab bag of games on that system just to see what people were up to. You get those like little 59 block cards that can hold like 3 games, so you find out what was really important to those people.
Exactly.
They had the card for 1 game. I feel like I'm gonna get them. It's just Animal Crossing across the board.
That's the thing, right? Like you almost have it's now that I've done it 3 times and I've checked probably like between 30 to 50 cards. I don't know the exact number, but it's like, yeah, you like Final Fantasy X, GTA San Andreas, SSX Tricky, like a lot. It's like a lot of stuff that keeps popping up over and over. But occasionally you find a cool one. So I found Mad Maestro on one recently. Or
that's cool.
Leisure Suit Larry, which was troubling.
It's random. Hey, that's that's a fun idea though. You've done a couple of those, so maybe I'll steal that idea one time for GameCube.
I'd love to see you do GameCube. Do it up.
Do you just find a bag of memory cards online, or do you just go out and buy just memory cards, just single ones, just throughout eBay?
The first time I bought like a lot of memory cards from PS1 and 2. So it was like genuinely like random. I'm risking it. I don't know if these things are going to have anything on there. The second time and then the third time, one of our local stores, Retro Rehome, it's about an hour away from here. I just asked him, I'm like, got any PS2 cards? He's like, yeah, got a bunch. I was like, give them. I'll take them. Grab them all.
Nice.
I was like, don't touch them. Don't wipe them. Don't look at them. Just give them to me. And
Wow. Okay, you got lucky on that. What if they format them or erase them before they hand them out?
well, that's the thing about PS2 cards. I can't remember this for GameCube, but I'm pretty sure it's the same thing where it's like you can't like wipe them. You have to like manually delete
Each
blocks.
one.
Yeah, it's like
Yep.
most people don't do that. So it's
Nah.
like it's the perfect sort of like memories are on there almost always. So
Okay. Good stuff. Good stuff. Yeah. Maybe I'll look into that for the GameCube. That could be a fun. That could be a fun little one-off thing just to see.
totally.
So I'll see what I can come up with there. But otherwise, been a couple weeks for Sony.
Been
Sony
a
on this one.
been a wild start to 2025. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah. There's been some frustration, doom and glooming going on. I don't know, man. It's interesting right now online for Sony. So we'll go over all the stuff that's been happening. A lot of cancellations, questions around Jim Ryan. Should he have his face on a cookie? Should have not have his face on a cookie? A lot of questions about it. So we'll go through that though. As of course Ryan has a lot of the news beats, and I assume you have a PSX going to give it to you as well.
As
Lined up.
always, as always.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Yeah, so I felt like I was behind all day today because I had the Assassin's Creed Shadows preview that I did.
Mm.
And I was like a couple hours of that, which I think the embargo for that's tomorrow. But they're like, you can tell people you played it, but you can't tell them what you played. So okay, great, thanks. Good.
I'll find out soon enough. Obviously, by the time we're listening to this, probably or close to it.
Close to it, yeah. But I mean, like Thursday, you'll see previews go up everywhere for that game. So we'll see how it goes. But we're here. So what do you want to start with, Ryan? What's the move?
As always, we have our PS Plus lineup, Extra and Premium, already live on BSN, John. Only 9 games for Extra, but big headline title, God of War Ragnarok. Also Like a Dragon, Gaiden, The Man Who Erased His Name, Atlas Fallen, Reign of Sand, SD Gundam, Battle Alliance, Sayonara Wild Hearts, Anno Mutationum, Orcs Must Die 3, Citizen Sleeper, and Poker Club. That's on PS Plus Extra. So God of War Ragnarok, that's a little over 2 years after the launch of the game. A stark contrast from Forbidden West, which went in like after a year.
Yeah, I don't think they're playing around with that anymore. They mentioned that the Horizon Forbidden West doing that hurt them in terms of sales. So I feel like they're being careful with that one.
We have the Insomniac breach to thank for that information. That was very much an experiment that like just destroyed the game's a la carte sales. PS Plus Premium, though, we have Indiana Jones and the Staff of Kings for PS2 and Medieval 2 for PS1. What's so funny about the Indiana Jones thing, not even so much it's like, oh, we're actually getting like the PS5 version in spring, well, very soon in spring, the Great Circle, mind you. But it's like, if you remember with Premium, PSP and PS1, it's like, oh, what's the one publisher that is like just fully backing this thing? Disney and Lucasfilm.
Disney. Yep.
And now it's like, oh, wait a minute. PS2 games are up. Oh, no. How many of these are we going to see now?
That's such a random. I mean, I don't mind it because that, in a way, I do like subscription services for this to just shove a random game in your face. And you're like, yeah, I remember playing. Now, Indiana Jones, there were a couple of them back in the day. I have the one on the original Xbox over here. I remember that one. I remember it not being very good as well, though. So I have I'm trying to remember if this is the game I played or not. Well, I haven't downloaded it yet or anything.
Yeah, I looked up gameplay and I'm like, this looks very stiff. And like this is like a late life cycle PS2 game. It came out in like 2009, I want to say.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Oh, it was on the Wii as well.
Yeah, like a PS2 Wii game or something.
Yeah, I think it was.
That was such a funny moment in time too. It's like, because a lot of studios dropped Xbox and GameCube pretty fast, obviously. But like the perfect mix there for a long time for those last gen games was actually PS2 and Wii.
Yep. PS2 and Wii. They were. I mean, the Wii was more capable, clearly, but it was still close enough to where, we'll put it on PS2, we'll get on the Wii. Massive audience, if you think about it. Then over 200 million, pretty quickly, because the Wii exploded in sales for those first 3 years. So they were just selling to 200 plus million people after 2.5 years of the Wii. So good audience there to just start throwing random games at, see what sticks.
Yeah, now we have it here on PlayStation 5 of all things. Hey. Premium. Yeah. Well, now it's like, now I'm like, oh man, the Disney catalog on PS2, this thing probably runs deep. There's probably a lot of games we're going to be getting now. So,
well, I mean, with Disney, a lot of Star Wars stuff too. So
yeah, a lot of Star Wars. Yeah.
how that goes if they start tapping some of those old Star Wars games too.
You have to imagine that's happening, right? I mean, PSP already had a ton, and same with PS1. So floodgates are open. But hey, Medieval 2, always cool.
That was a fun one to have too, right? That's cool. Maybe that you think that laying the groundwork a bit for the remake.
I think what's happening here is that we're getting whatever we can get on this program.
Hey,
That's what I think is happening.
That's probably about right.
We have some games leaving PS Plus, though, because we have the new lineup live on PSN. So you've got 30 days left, or about 30 days to play these games. They're exiting on February 18th. That is the Outer Worlds Spacer's Choice Edition. A lot of Tales games. So Tales of Arise, Zestiria, Symphonia Remastered, Zestiria Definitive Edition, and then Outriders, Scarlet Nexus, and Bulletstorm Full Clip Edition.
What are the Bandai Namco deal run up or something? What is that?
Pretty, yeah. It almost always these go in and out at the same time. So, yeah, even if you wanted to play all these and you started playing right now, good luck.
Yeah, you wouldn't have enough time. And I guess Symphonia and Arise.
You could probably play you could probably play 2 of these before they're gone.
Vesperia is pretty good too, though. That's tough.
I gotta play Arise. Never even started that.
Oh, you didn't play that one yet? It was good. I liked it early on, and then I don't say it lost me, but it lost some steam midway through. But I mean, I liked it overall. I thought it was a good Tales game.
So you did finish it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was like 40. It took me like 40, 45, 46 hours to beat it. And then there's some.
Oh, that's not bad.
No, there's some post game stuff too, so you can spend more time afterwards.
Okay, that's not bad. Oh, excuse me. That's our Plus lineup. Going into our first story here, had to mention this new Astrobot speedrun level. Yeah, that's good news, right? So the PlayStation Tournaments XP in London, in the finals, there was indeed a new speedrun level that they showed off that they ended up playing. So you would presume that's going to at some point show up in the game for everybody else.
Yeah, you think they're just going to drop this randomly PlayStation blog post, boom, Astrobot, PlayStation Tournaments level available now, two new bots?
I'm just wondering, like, how many are we getting for this game? You know, this is already like more than I thought we were getting. So, yeah.
You think there's any movement in the background after it won Game of the Year to be like, maybe we should do more a little more for this game than we were gonna like? Do you think they're gonna do something with the Game of the Year trophy or whatever? Like, are they gonna put it in the game?
Oh, that'd be fun. Yeah,
something like that.
Maybe something like that would be pretty cool.
Sony likes their awards. They like the prestige of it all. Yeah. Like, what instead of doing the thing back in the day where they would do the re-release of the game and the box art would have like the Game of the Year thing, put it in the game. That's kind of fun.
I mean, they did the whole Christmas thing, so I can get behind that. I mean, that's actually a great little segue here, John, because like in relation to that, I did want to mention, Astrobot is also seeing some nominations at DICE, which is taking place February 13th. So Astrobot was nominated for Game of the Year, Family Game of the Year, and it was also in the Outstanding Achievement category for Animation, Original Music Composition, Technical Achievement, and Game Design as well. I don't know if you know, but there's also there's like those sites that track Game of the Year like wins across just the entire industry, and they might have their own rules as far as like what publications they count and which ones they don't. But like the top result on Google, that one Game of the Year site that tracks these wins, dude, Astro's got like 300 or something by now. It's
my gosh, 300. Just for everything, yeah.
It's the leading game. Like that's one Game of the Year.
Crazy 300. Hey, Team Asobi coming through. I'm
proud of them.
Saying it for a while. They should do this. I'm glad they did. I'm glad it worked out.
I'm so proud of them. I'm very happy for Team Asobi.
They got to do that Game of the Year level. Then they have to if they have that many awards. Come on. And Jeff Keighley would be falling over himself to get the Game Awards trophy in there.
He probably would be pretty hype. I don't know would they be that pompous though to make a whole level about how great they are.
I would. Yeah, absolutely. If you won Game of the Year like that and you're up against some big time competition, oh yeah, come on.
That seems like it'd be in bad taste to like make a big deal about it, but maybe like a little nod or something.
You think so? Nah, I'd make a whole level where you got to unbox every trophy we won. You got to go. You got to find each trophy. What was this one for? Oh yeah, gameplay. Yep, that makes sense. It lines up.
Okay, well, we'll see if Team Asobi's on that.
Hey, take that victory lap, Team Asobi. Take it.
Oh shit. Let's move on to this. We got here's an update on a story we covered before. So some of those PS5 Pro growing pains with PSSR.
Mm.
Star Wars Jedi Survivor got a recent patch that was meant to address the PS5 Pro issues. Developer Respawn Entertainment sent out a new patch. This one was only for the PS5 version, saying that they updated the game to use the latest version of PSSR, mentioning that it should. And it's funny how the patch notes even said this. They're trying to reduce the foliage shimmering, the try to improve the reflections on the river, some of those like sore spots in the game. Digital Foundry already like checked the patch and it's like it's better, but like still kind of a little dodgy here and there. It's not perfect per se. So I thought it was at least worth mentioning. That's a one studio that went back to update it up to the latest version of PSSR. But
We're just gonna have that a lot.
Yeah.
For any games that are already out, like games that are coming out and they're still in development, it seems like they maybe won't have as much of an issue just because they're not developing on the older SDK and stuff. So at least EA and Respawn took a shot at it, I guess. But they're gonna do another. There's gonna be a third game. It's gonna be a trilogy, so that'll be the one I'm sure to look at for PSSR and everything. I think they're gonna try to get that out before the end of this generation.
It's just a shame that there's not like at least a sort of, I don't want to say mandate, but a best practice here of like just leave the old modes in, even if it sounds redundant. Like it's sort of
Right.
it is a redundancy in place to make sure that if the new patch goes out and it's not looking too hot, people can default to something else. Moving on to Lost Soul Aside, the China Hero Project game that I believe this is still the case, but the Steam page for this game did remove the PSN requirement. So that's the second game now, the second PlayStation published game that no longer, well, actually, because Helldivers 2, there was obviously a big deal as to why that's gone. But this one, for some reason, goes against the grain, which is also right next to Midnight Murder Club, which SI is publishing. That requires the PSN ID. So I don't know what's going on here. I'm really kind of baffled at this one.
Is it like a regional thing? Because I'm trying to remember which countries weren't supported by PSN that would be an issue for Lost Soul Aside. I'm trying to think if there's any clashing there, because I'm sure that could be an issue because there are so many countries that just don't have PlayStation Network accounts supported.
Yeah, it's
that
like
you
over 100.
basically ruled out completely, right? Of being able to play the game then.
Yeah, that's the only thing that reasonably makes sense to me is that maybe they've got some telemetry in place that says like this needs to be available in those 100+ countries. Was it
Right.
nearly 200 or something crazy like that? It's damn near most of them. So
yeah, and it's a single player. We believe a single player game anyway. It's not like Helldivers 2 or something where they say it's for your safety. That they at least making a case for it in terms of online play. But this is the games that are always weird to a lot of us is like a single player game, but you need an online connection. It's like, why do I need that? Why do I need an account? Have you done that before, Ryan, where you start up a game? And I think this happened with some Ubisoft, some EA games, and it's like sign up for this account. It's like, why? Like it's a single player game, and then you have to go through, and it's not link your PlayStation or your Xbox or even your Nintendo account, whatever, to it, like by the press of a button. They make you actually use your email, make a password. Usually I see that and I just back out of the game and move on. That's it. It's over.
I mean, no, I don't think anybody likes it. I mean, would that be fair to say? Obviously, people don't like it. It's just that it's like the new normal, and Sony wants to get in on the new normal.
Oh no, I just mean like in general, like when you see that account page pop up for one that's like single player offline, it's like nah, or online. I was like, nah, I'm good. That's
Yeah,
I need to be online for this.
I feel like I immediately want to be like, oh, I really don't want to do that.
Yeah, like the online multiplayer ones. I half the time now I assume when I start a game up, like Marvel Rivals, I just played around with the game to see what it was exactly. And there is some account linking stuff happening in there. It's like, okay, it's an online game, I get it, multiplayer, but with some random single player game, it makes no sense to me. It's annoying.
Yeah, well, if you're looking to play Lost Soul Side on Steam, then you're good.
There you go. Good news.
Although you don't have to log into PSN. You already have one. So you wouldn't have to in that case. You did mention actually Marvel Rivals, small little side note there, but that Advanced Suit 2.0 from Spider-Man's going to the game as well on January 30th, I want to say, the end of the month. Which that seems like a sort of natural. I almost would be shocked otherwise if that didn't happen. But that's
yeah. I mean, if I'm Marvel at this point with how popular that game is, anything happening in the Marvel Cinematic Universe in general as well going forward, or even in games that they're putting out, I would try to tie it into that that title because it's super popular right now. I played some of it, and I don't think I'm as into the game as a lot of other people are. It's fine. It is high quality, but still, even now with the Marvel characters, the hero shooter stuff just is has waned on me. I think at this point, but I see it.
Yeah.
Like it's fun. You find a character you really like. I was Captain America running around just bashing people with a shield. It was great.
How much do we really open up this can of worms? How much is the IP heavy lifting that game?
Oh, quite a bit. I feel like that's one of the main reasons it's so successful, or having these characters. But we do have games that come out that also used Marvel characters like Avengers, and that did do well. So there is something to it when it comes to NetEase really trying to keep the source material as intact as possible. But yes, having characters, from the Marvel universe there that don't look like stunt doubles from the characters, it all comes together nicely for that,
I always
so
I always forget about Marvel Avengers. I really do. It's like
yeah,
that game has completely exited my mind.
that's probably a good thing. I mean, you can still play it now. Like you can still play it if you want, and you can actually play all the way through it by yourself. So you can experience the story and stuff, but it's just not, it just didn't work out. The one game that always annoyed me that didn't work though for like these Marvel games that were licensed had to have been Guardians of the Galaxy. I have no idea why that game didn't work.
What?
It should
I
have.
thought people liked it. Or are you just referring to like the sales performance?
Let's say it like Square
Yeah.
didn't. I mean, they got rid of the studio. The studio got sold. They got
Oh
rid of
yeah.
them. Yes, this didn't meet expectations, and now you're with Embracer Group or whatever.
Well, that's because it didn't sell 20 million copies in 2 days.
I
That's
know.
why. So
Yeah.
it's a harsh reality we have to face with Square. That's why that's why they did what they did, apparently. So there's that for the for Marvel Rivals. Yeah, a lot of people, even I know they're playing that game. I'm like, Jesus, this thing really
Mhm.
blew up. Well, we do have some PlayStation Studio games that we're expecting this year, like Death Stranding 2 on the beach. Brief little mention here. We had Hideo Kojima recently discuss this on Twitter openly, talking about crunch, how the studio right now is in crunch time, discussing how it's kind of a stressful moment for the team. He's talking about the Japanese voice recording and the inevitable pile of other tasks, he says, which includes writing comments, explanations, essays, interviews, discussions, and non-game related work. It's incredibly tough. It does seem like they're making sure this thing is going to be ready and on time for release this year.
Yeah. I mean, when they start saying stuff like that, that they're sleeping at the office half the times, and it's like, oof, that's tough. That's tough. I mean, a lot of people go through it like their jobs and stuff when there is a big launch of a product or something goes wrong, even with something they're launching or that's happening now. It's you got to put a lot of time in, overtime, whatever. And yeah, we hear. I think it's because we also hear about those horror stories from. I think Rockstar had some really bad crunch happen a decade plus ago, and it got ugly there for a while. So I think there are levels to it anyway when it comes to the crunch nature, to where some people are just going to work overtime and that's it because they have
Mhm.
to, or they feel they have to get it done.
It's a shame. I really hope that's not where they're at right now, but I'm sure there's a lot of that still at play. When do we think
Oh
this
yeah,
is when do we think this is launching?
this to me felt like something that would happen after the summer.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same. I was feeling like October or something, but it still gets awkward depending on if 5 or 6 comes out, GTA
That's
6.
the problem. That's the
Yeah.
problem for all these companies right now is everyone. So they might be thinking, oh, we're going to crunch and get this thing out this year. But man, wouldn't it be a shame if they spent all this time crunching and then GTA 6 dropped in October and they're like, we're going to wait actually until 2026.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, great. All right. I guess I'll take my vacation early then.
It's kind of insane how this like effect that game is going to have rippling across everywhere else. Like there's even a discussion going around about the price of that particular game, but it's like with all this stuff getting moved around, you almost have to figure like, well, if there's a lot of games that are trying to launch in let's say Q3, Q4, now they want to avoid that, they got to put them somewhere. Then they're going to get bunched up into like Q1 of 26 or something. It's
People are still going to launch around GTA 6. It's going to happen. Like Nintendo, I'm sure will launch something because they're not
yeah,
going to care.
yeah.
GTA 6, whatever. What are they? People are going to go up to the register and be like, oh, am I going to buy the new 3D Mario or am I going to buy GTA 6? It's like, The audience, while it's a very general audience for Mario and stuff, it's not competing as much as, oh yeah, here's Death Stranding, here's GTA 6, two mature rated games and stuff.
Yeah. It'll be very weird to see how this year plays out with where Switch 2 also lands.
Mhm.
Moving on to more game rumors for PlayStation Studios. We got a lot of details come out on this Gummy Bears project that was spun off from Bungie, of course. Gummy Bears was that incubation project at Bungie for about 3 years. It's been described previously as a very colorful looking team based MOBA. And so there was a report that came out from the Game Post, and then these details were further corroborated by Paul Tassi at Forbes. But this codename Gummy Bears game, the details that we're learning is that it apparently incorporates elements inspired by Smash Brothers. So multiple sources that are familiar with the project say that players will not have health bars, but instead a percentage-based damage system that leads to stage knockouts, which, not a fighting game, it's still meant to be a team-based MOBA of some kind, but it's not like the core gameplay is not fighting. It was also, again, described as being colorful, attract a younger audience, feature multiple game modes, and offer 3 distinct class types, that being support, attack, and defense. It's also described as having a lo-fi, cozy aesthetic and as a big tonal shift from what Bungie has previously done, but it's also seen as the studio's most fun project in incubation. This, it sounds, I don't want to say weird, I'll say interesting.
It does sound like they play a lot of Smash Brothers on break. That's what it sounded like for years and years now. I mean, just based on the few elements that they described there with the percentage-based knockout. Although MOBA class system and stuff, it seems like it'll just be inspired by Smash, but not exactly like it. So that, that's not, it's not a bad idea to try that, because that was a legitimate interesting thing that was introduced by Smash back on the N64. You don't have health bars in a party fighting game. You just build up, and eventually you'll be able to knock them clean off the level. But if they can recover, it technically doesn't matter how high that their percentage gets. So in a way, when you think about these MOBA games and stuff, you still have that health meter. That's kind of a fun thing to try to adapt to that. So it seems like a unique experience that would be lined up for live service, which, man, it's getting harder and harder now with live service games to make stuff unique like that. So if the aesthetic is, I'm more curious about how it looks really when they talk about it being a massive tonal shift for Bungie, bright, colorful. Like, when I start hearing that, I think Fortnite, and I'm like, oh, is it going to look like that? And then people are gonna be like, it's this Fortnite game that Bungie made.
Yeah, it seems like any sort of new property that has that sort of description, it's going to get stacked against Fortnite. I do find it really interesting though with this, like the Smash Brothers mechanic. Surely there's things I'm like not thinking of, but like it's kind of surprising that like such a inventive, creative mechanic at the time, 20 years onward, like not really that many games have sort of played with that idea. Even when we're talking about a mascot brawler like say PS All Stars, it's like that's the one element they didn't put in the game. So
Right.
it's interesting that like we haven't seen that explored more. Just straight up like just take a page out of Nintendo's book, but plop it into a different genre. That's what this is.
I've never thought about if that's patented by Nintendo or something weird. Like there's some weird patent around that. I've never considered that. Maybe that. I wonder if that's why. You're right, though. It is strange that fighting games, party games, even haven't necessarily used that much at all.
Nothing has that I can think of.
Yeah, and Nintendo's used it the whole time. Like ever since they introduced it on the N64, it's continued on up to this day with Smash Brothers Ultimate. So that is interesting that you bring that up. That I'm thinking about it.
Yeah, I mean it's like it's a hook that I think like, oh yeah, like why don't more studios kind of play around with that idea? Just not a fighting game. That's how they carve out their own path on this.
I'm sure somebody in the comments could probably drop a few titles randomly that we're not thinking of, or that are kind of obscure that use it, but definitely not ones that are heavily advertised or like cornerstones in multiplayer or even single player games that I can think of.
Right. So yeah, I mean, we'll watch this game very closely. It's now under the PlayStation Studios like umbrella proper. It should be a formally named PS Studio if this game does end up coming out, which is really the big topic of this week, because Sony's live service situation has gotten grim, we'll say. So we'll just dive right into this story. Bend and Blue Point Games, they were both working on live service titles. They're both canceled. This was reported by Jason Schreier, writing for Bloomberg. A PlayStation spokesperson has confirmed that the live service games at Bend Studio and Blue Point Games have indeed been canceled following a recent portfolio review. The spokesperson also clarified that the studios will not be closed. They say, and I quote here, Bend and Blue Point are highly accomplished teams who are valued members of the PlayStation Studios family, and we are working closely with each studio to determine what are the next projects. Now, Jason did confirm that for Blue Point, they were working on God of War Ragnarok from 2020 to 2022. But after that, it was a God of War live service game. There was also a rumor regarding when the studios actually were told this news. So it was kind of one of these things where like Jeff Grubb brought this up. Oh, they learned it the same day everybody else did. I guess Schreier chimed in afterwards, just clarifying that teams were notified a little bit before ahead of time. I don't know if that's really neither here nor there. Obviously, you do want to tell the team members a little bit early before everybody else does. But really the big news here is we've got 2 more games that have kicked the bucket from 2 pretty well-known studios where there were a lot of eyes on these teams. So how do we even dissect this one, John? I'll start off by saying, did not think that's what Blue Point was doing. And I'm sure a lot of other people thought the same.
Hold on. You mentioned that they may be helping out. I thought you mentioned that, didn't you, on Sony Santa Monica or God of War?
Well, so, here's the thing, right? Like with Blue Point, they were working on Ragnarok for about 2 years until the game came out. That much I always knew. But it was always a question of when they were acquired and they said we're doing original content, but they never said new IP, and that was very purposeful language. You know, a lot of people like thought for a long time that means new IP, but it's like, no. I mean, almost always publishers have no problem saying new IP. The studio's doing new IP. It's purposeful language. I guess what was lesser known for a lot of folks is that like how many team members were tied up with Ragnarok. It became my understanding that like that's what the studio was doing for 2 years was Ragnarok. They didn't really start their own thing until after that work was done. And that's where there were more unknowns, because in their in SIA's business segment briefing, they were listed as a partner studio, implying that they're not making their own game. I was still under the assumption of like, okay, they're working on an existing property, but it's like a new thing, which this is what ended up happening. But funny enough, in recent months, I thought to myself, like maybe they're still supporting Santa Monica. I was starting to think maybe they are doing, well, they themselves are not doing a new IP, but maybe they're helping Santa Monica on their new IP because they've already got that relationship. And so that's kind of where my head was starting to go, because if you look at Blue Point, they don't, like, as far as I know, they still don't have the kind of roles that lead their own game from the ground up. Like they don't have a game director on staff. They don't have a narrative director, creative director, things like that. That doesn't exclude them from possibly doing another partnership, which is obviously very possible, like they did with Demon's Souls, where that was in collaboration with Japan Studio. So it's not like these things are impossible per se, but that's sort of where I was with Blue Point. To hear live service though, I mean, I'm genuinely like, what the hell are we doing here?
Everybody had that reaction though, and I saw that. I was like, you know, the word that came to mind when I started going through the report and sat for a minute was devastating. That was the word that came to mind.
This one stings. I mean, so the really puzzling thing to me is like, yeah, like PlayStation wants live service. Yeah, they want to leverage IP that they have. Like, if you told me 2 years ago, like they want to do a God of War live service game, I'm like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. I wouldn't think it's Blue Point. You know what I mean? Like, they're not a massive studio, and they've always done these collaboration projects, right? They always are, you know, they team up with another studio, and that makes sense given their track record, because they always like do port or remaster jobs or remakes in some cases. But it's just like, what was the end goal with that team? Like, because they would have to scale up tremendously to
They have
like
to at least double in size.
like with, yeah, undeniably they would have, like, what was the end game? I mean, sure, like they would grow and scale up and everything, but it's like that would be a studio where they were known for so many amazing ports, remasters, remakes, them saying they want to do new original work, which I think a lot of fans did get behind that idea. Like, oh, awesome, you're going to do a new, what people think is a single player game, and it was this. It's like, man, that one I am truly baffled by.
That's the thing that really sticks out to me right now is we're to a point with some of these things that are being revealed, because Sony themselves didn't announce this. I almost wonder, would we have not known this if Jason Schreier didn't run that report? Would we be sitting here still a year from now, like, oh, Blue Point's got to be showing up now? Like, is that what would be happening? Or you think Sony would have put something out, or someone would have said something like from Sony or from Blue Point, then been like, yeah, we kind of had to restart. They put that message out. Remember when Naughty Dog put something out that was like, we had to figure something out, we had to pivot, and we decided to cancel or shelve the multiplayer Last of Us game that we had going, and we're moving into single player. Like, is that something we would have heard from Blue Point in a month or two? Because this the reason I said it's devastating isn't because it costs them money to do this for multiple years. We assume they had 2 full years in this God of War live service game, and then they, I guess, decided to reposition and do something else. Which, hey, you might be onto something, Ryan. Maybe they are going back to Sony Santa Monica to help work on that that original IP now. That might be Blue Point's thing until that comes out and they can move on to next generation. But the devastating thing is the lost time. Man, it sounds bad right now because they launched the PS5 with Demon's Souls. That might be their only PS5 game.
Well, I mean, so you mentioned time, right? Like, it's easy to look at Bend and be like, okay, we did kind of already have an idea of like that's what they were doing, because it is 2 years ago they openly talked about this on the PlayStation blog. It was a big post showing off a new studio logo. Like, we always knew in plain sight, we're working on a new, they said multiplayer, not live service, but it's like, what do you think this game's really going to be? They said multiplayer, AAA, new IP, using the open world systems that we established in Days Gone. So it's like, oh, okay, we have like a very small synopsis. But with Bend, they shipped Days Gone in 2019. So they were already like 3 years behind, where there was this 3-year limbo period of the studio not figuring out where they were going to go. There was that report about them maybe doing Uncharted for a little bit. Then they asked to be taken off it. There's also this misinformation keeps spreading about Bend. The reason why they never did a Days Gone 2, it never passed Ben's own internal.
Right. They voted it down.
They voted it down. People, yeah, it's not like, this is, I think, maybe a bigger misconception for a lot of folks with PlayStation studios, and a lot of studios in some cases, which is the studios have their own agency. Like, they can make their own things, make vertical slices. They pitch that to Sony. Oftentimes this isn't Sony putting Blue Point on something. It means Blue Point must have, in theory, made this slice and proposed that to Sony, because they know, like, that's probably something they can get behind. I mean, Sony still will come down with the hammer and stop projects or not greenlight things, and that's what they're there to do. But oftentimes it's still, the studios have their own corporate structure, their own free will to make things and conceptualize things, and they have to, approach daddy and ask for money. Like, that's how that it's not necessarily like somebody at Sony told Blue Point, you have to do this, Ben, you have to do that. It's not as it's not as black and white as people are making it seem. Having said that, Ben was stuck for 3 years. It was great news in 2022 hearing that they're finally moving on to something else, and now the clock is reset on them. So that's from 2019.
Yeah,
that's awful.
Start working on that PS6 game now.
It sucks. And for Ben and Blue Point, it's pretty tragic. I'll admit.
The sad thing is Ben wanted to be taken off of running support or working on Uncharted. I hate to say it, I think both these studios going back to support work now. I don't know. I mean, it's almost like you took your shot and now you got to go back down to the bottom of the line and go back through training, or I don't know. It's tough. Maybe Ben can figure it out, but like, Blue Point is the studio that I think confused a lot of people, because there's no progression to get to this point. I feel like doing a live service game at Sony, first party wise, would be incredibly difficult for anyone, because there is that sense of like, you have the PlayStation Studios logo flashing at the beginning. There's a sense of like quality that they try to uphold with that. So with that in mind, Blue Point has only ever done remakes, remasters, ports. And then it's like, okay, you're going to go from preschool to high school immediately. It's like you're not working up the progression of, like Ben Studio, you mentioned, the Days Gone, so they have that experience of the open world, the narrative driven stuff, player progression, even with the characters originally. Bluepoint has like none of that. So they're just immediately going to go from helping out with Ragnarok to now making a full live service game with God of War.
Yeah, it's a leap that was just like I don't know what we were. I don't know what we were thinking here. I genuinely don't, with that one in particular.
Do you think it's possible that, because this was Jim Ryan time, right? If I had to think back the timelines, it seemed like, just based on what we know now and looking at the list, which there's a whole list, people started making lists. It looks bad. It looks really bad when there's a list in front of you of this stuff.
I did want to go over that, yes, because it's hard to keep track of where they are at now at this point, because they outlined a while ago. This was, gosh, over 2 years ago now, I think, where they outlined the 12 live service games by fiscal year 25 or 26. And like if you want to run down the list, most of them are, well, 7 of them are gone now.
But what I'm thinking is, at that time, if you wanted to, so let's say Bluepoint does want to make their own game and they're trying to figure out what the best pitch would be. I mean, whatever you want to pitch, you should throw live service in there, because it seemed like Sony was green light and everything. It felt like they were just handing out money wherever. Companies that weren't even with them, they were like taking chances left, right, and right. And I guess in their mind, we'll give it a couple years. Doesn't work, we'll cancel it, and hopefully something hits. Fortunately for them, Helldivers 2 did hit, but it almost feels like that's starting to get evened out now with all the misses that we're seeing. I saw, let me give a shout out who, Okami 13 posted up a list.
I have the push square one here. The Last of Us multiplayer, Marvel Spider-Man: The Great Web, which honestly, that didn't really get very far. The London Studio live service game closed the studio down. Twisted Metal was at Lucid Games, then went to Fire Sprite, canceled. Helldivers 2 came out. They're counting the Payback project from Bungie, but that was canceled in August of this year. Then Concord, that came out, live service game from Ben, canceled recently. Bluepoint, God of War, Fair Game still coming out, Marathon still coming out, we expect, and same for Horizon Online. There is a separate project that we'll talk about in a second after this story, but it's a lot of games that did not make it, which I do want to mention this. I don't know if you remember this from a while ago. It was during a Spawncast episode, and it was before a lot of the live service stuff was really kicking off. It was a point I mentioned of like, and this is what you were getting at. PlayStation Studios is very, Sony's going for a very boutique image here. Like, we put out these gorgeous looking cinematic experiences. The production value is through the roof, and it's this Marvel-esque thing that we're putting out there, right? It's clear that they don't want to. I was saying before, like, man, they're doing 12 games. How many, like, if 5 of those fail, like, are they going to really be that committed to keep doing more with how expensive they are? There's a certain tipping point where it's like, okay, this shit is not working out. And at a certain point, it might even damage our image if we like see all these games through the finish line and they don't end up doing well. We just had Concord just fall flat on its face. Surely that is also playing a very big role in the recent portfolio review.
I think you're right. Concord, rippling effects, would be putting it lightly, I think, right now through Sony, of, wow, this thing, not only did it come out and was bad and got pulled back and stuff. We have that reported budget. We don't know exactly how much, but hundreds of millions of dollars that this thing ballooned to. So I wonder if not only did they see the reception from the audience, the just general gaming as not being good, being attached to the Sony logo, but then also going, wow, the costs for live service get out of control really fast. And if it doesn't work, how many of these are we actually going to be able to make before we start really feeling it? Before it becomes, even if all the other ones hit, we're still in the negative. Like, how much longer do we go with that? So I kind of feel like they had a longer leash a few years ago. Now everything's just short leashed. They're cutting stuff immediately. They're, looking at studios even outside of their group, their internal group, of like, okay, we had a live service with them. We're not going to roll the dice on it anymore. We're cutting it, even if it's $100 million something that we're losing. It's not worth the potential risk there. So yeah, I think Concord is going to have effects for quite a while. And again, Blue Point and their situation is tough. Is it really that problematic to have a studio that's just really good at remakes and remasters? Is that an issue? Maybe, I guess Blue Point doesn't always want to do that, but man, if you're good at that kind of stuff and you sell copies and people look at you as like the studio for that, like you're really good at that, doesn't seem like a bad thing to have on your mantle in the living room.
No, I would have always been fine with Blue Point if they were still doing like that's what I really loved about that studio. But like I get it if they're creative people and they want to do something new and that's very much what they expressed. That's fine too. That's what I was saying. Like I think fans were totally okay with like, oh, okay, you're going to do something new. Oh, like great, we support that as well. Like it's just nobody thought it was God of War live service. And
What if it was the God of War like Atreus spinoff, Ryan? Would that have been a bit
yeah,
made more sense to you, single player Atreus spinoff?
well, I mean, that's where a lot of the speculation was. It's like, oh, okay, maybe it's like a spin-off Atreus game or just God of War in general because they were working with Santa Monica and maybe that was their sort of, 2-year test bed and they like passed and earned their stripes to work on the property themselves or something like it all like on paper made sense. It just, I guess, it went in the direction of live service, which I'll mention this too, the entire time I'll always stand by this. Like they were like the company was going about this in a way which was very responsible as far as like what fans were expecting out of their games. It wasn't impeding on single player. They were bringing in new studios. They acquired new studios. They partnered up with different studios. A lot of the PS Studios output, the precious single player games were not really touched. Naughty Dog was the first one where it's like, oh man, that was a fork in the road, and that studio almost stopped doing single player, and they did lose a lot of time. That was the
Yeah.
first one. That was the first one. London Studio, arguably, the thing is, London Studio for the last 15 something years did like camera games and PSVR and SingStar, so it's like they weren't really doing standard 2D single player games for a very long time. But some would argue they should have went back to that. I would agree. And now there's Blue Point and Bend, which Bend we knew they were doing single or multiplayer. We just didn't know how big of a component that was. Blue Point, the expectation I think for many people was single player. So these two recently with Naughty Dog sort of being reset, plus how long it takes games to make, were how far into the PS5 cycle. Like these just did not really feel very good.
Yeah, I think that's the other issue right now is the PS5 cycle. You see the sentiment online and people are like, "Oh, wow, there's a lot of." It's almost like in in sports, for example, you see like salary cap stuff and they're like, "We're going to go all in this year and that's going to cost us for 3 years where we're not going to be as good or there's going to be gaps basically of how much money we can then put out." And I just kind of see that as the development time that's lost here adding up, and I'm almost wondering if almost feels like the second half of the PS5 is going to be a bit, I don't know, a bit quieter, a bit more refined, constrained, I guess. That's the concern right now because let's say Bluepoint and Ben were working on these single player games, or even in Ben's case, a multiplayer game that was going to make it to market. I mean, we would have expected those to hit 2026, then 2027, maybe like one in the other terms of years. And it would have started to, I think, come together with some of these other games to be like that 2019 to 2020 era for the PS4, or it's got some good games back to back to back.
Yeah, well, it's almost seemed like that's what we were lined up to get. Is just like the sort
Yeah.
of wave of like games that come from these studios. It's like Housemarque is now like in a position where, in theory, their proposed game is probably going to be
It's on the
late
way.
life, late life cycle PS. But that's we always assume like production's going well on these games. That's not
Save
always the
us,
case.
Housemarque.
I wish that's one too where I'm like, man, nah, I'm a little nervous.
Introducing Housemarque's latest live service game.
They've
Oh
always
no.
said they're sticking to their action bullet hell and now doing a narrative. So
Stay in your lane, Housemarque.
I think we're okay. I think we're okay. We don't need to do any funny business. I mean, the
Oh gosh.
director left, so there's new leadership on that game, but
Oh man.
we'll see. We'll see. It's
I
gonna be a while. It's
you know,
it's rough.
this made me think of something though, Ryan. Made me think of something. Are
Let's
we
hear it.
sure that Fair Games is coming out?
John, it's here. Well, I think that fair games is one thing, right?
Yeah.
The Horizon multiplayer game that's been in development since 2018. 2018.
Mm,
We'll just do this story real quick. So
yep.
there is two Horizon games that there's probably 15,000 that we're not thinking of right now. But there's these two that we know about. The one that's in-house at Gorilla, that's more of a cartoony looking but still multiplayer game. The other one from NCSoft. All right, so this was this they didn't like name or announce this game previously, but there was a formal partnership with NCSoft. We know this game's a thing. However, not anymore. According to a recent report from mtn.co.kr, the Horizon MMO that was in development at NCSoft was also canceled following a feasibility review at the studio. This took place between the end of the year and the end of last year and the start of this year. The projects Pantera, H, which H is also Skyline. Skyline is the Horizon project, and J, those were notified to stop development. That game was supposed to be like PC, console, mobile. So that one is dead.
Did you see the New Year's message or New Year's card they sent out? Did you see the quote for that?
No, what is that?
Wow, this cancellation must have been devastating for them from Sony, because that's not it. The thing they put out was crazy. Hold on, let me read. So imagine you're at the office on break or whatever, right? And you get the New Year's email or card. I don't know if they send out cards anymore, but like you get this in, and here it is. It says right here. This was in a statement to staff saying, let's make 2025 a year of bone-crushing efforts with the mindset that if we don't turn around by 2025, NCSoft will never have a future.
What? Wait a minute. So, and what the leadership at NCSoft sent that to?
That's what it says. That's what the story says.
Well, they didn't really get much time to course correct.
Yeah. I feel like that's on the heels of the announcement that probably one of their biggest partnerships got canceled. Like they might have been like, yo, this could be it. Horizon going to be this ongoing thing where we make a bunch of money, and it was going to go to mobile. We know what the cash cow mobile can be if you hit it right.
Well, so here's the thing though. I don't know if this one's like directly like Sony that bailed out of it though, because NCSoft's in kind of a rough spot right now. That's the news, is that they lost, or they're stopping like 3 games right now. So I don't know if this one is like Sony I mean, I'm sure they're maybe like, okay, we're not funding this anymore, but
right.
There's got to be some a little bit more to NCSoft, given that they're kind of in a rough spot. But
feasibility review. Yeah. I mean, we know Sony, but we have heard that Sony's recently done reviews of these live service games.
I mean, it lines up. It does line up. It depends on what kind of agreement they have with this team.
Right. At NCSoft, they were mobile, PC, PlayStation was the word. It was going to be, I guess, cross-platform for them. So it also kind of fit into the mobile initiative that Sony was doing.
What's funny is that I think this was the most recent reference that Sony mentioned for their mobile plans, like straight up admitting like, oh yeah, like Neon Koi clearly didn't work out, but we've got a partnership with NCSoft. Like they just said that. they just fucking said that like not that long ago. I feel like Sony had every intention of seeing that game through. And now that's not happening.
I am inclined to believe you, Ryan, because Sony believes that Horizon is basically Disney at this point. I don't know what it is about them at Horizon, but you know what? I will tell you this.
It sells, John. Can we stop doing this?
I will tell you this.
It sold, John.
It did sell. It did sell. I will tell you this though. The cancellation of this one makes the most sense to me out of the recent ones we've heard. Do you really need 2 Horizon multiplayer games at once?
Well, that's the really puzzling thing is you don't do 2, you do 1. But I guess like in my head, I was thinking this NCSoft game has to be like a very weird, like gameplay is completely different. It looks completely different. Like it's in the same universe, but like maybe it looks like almost, if you remember when we talked about that like Horizon ripoff game, where it's like once you watch gameplay, you're like, oh, this doesn't look anything like You know what I mean? Like like maybe that's why they're like going to be doing two of these things and let NCSoft do one, especially since they do want like they want something in the mobile space, especially this kind of like cross progression, like you can play it on your phone, then go to console, and so that's got to be where the thinking was on that. But that is another game that's canceled.
You know what? Maybe they were fighting tooth and nail to keep NCSoft on this thing, and they were like, "We can't do it, Herman. Leave us alone. Stop calling us at midnight over Horizon." That's the thing is, man. Herman Hulst is there. He might have greenlit 2 more Horizons yesterday.
Well, but this is a good point, John. Right now, I try to be generally more on the positive side. I try to look for like the good in things. So number one, the studio's not closing. Both these teams, mind you, are not closing. Blue Point and Bend.
Blue Point and Bend. Yeah. NCSoft will say apparently their Christmas card says, "Hey, roll the dice right now." That's
not. I don't. Hey, what happens at NCSoft stays at NCSoft. The good news with Bend and Blue Point, which they're saying this now, things could change very rapidly. We know how cutthroat this stuff can be. For now, they're keeping the studios around. I feel like geography is probably helping Bend a lot because they're in Oregon. They surely can't be that costly versus like their California studios, but I digress. The good thing is, I mean, one could make the argument, right? Like, yes, they wanted to try live service. This is them learning. Would we rather them learn like now, or do we want 12 games to come out and they all like fail? You know, like this is like the tough thing where it's like the lesser of two evils. And this is like very sort of game business 101, which is like you kill a project before you sink more money into it. So I did a portfolio review. I'm sure Concord played a big role. Absorbing Bungie and seeing their financials look like shit played a big role. Having Bungie, be integrated into PS Studios, them looking at their portfolio, providing feedback, realizing that there's a lot of concerns in this area that you historically have no presence in. Like, one would make the argument of, with Herman Hulst in particular, perhaps this is a course correction, which is, shit, I guess we got to like kill this one. Damn, that was a lot. But maybe we got to like realign ourselves here. I mean,
you're hoping.
You would think, right? I mean, you would. It's a lot of money, dude. The man was promoted somehow. I mean, he went from the head
somehow.
He went from the head of like when he was appointed the head of PS Studios. I thought that was a good move. Like he managed a studio. He led Guerrilla for a very long time. You want somebody that has that kind of on the ground experience. You don't hire outside of games or something like that. I don't like that shit. Get somebody that's has done the work before. I was always behind that idea. But it's like, okay, he was the head of PS Studios for not that long. And then he gets this new co-CEO role, basically a CEO role, the studio's business group next to Hideaki Nishino. He must be doing something right. And I would hope it's like understanding that maybe we are not going to burn financials on games that we know are not going to go anywhere. That's me trying to put some kind of positive spin on it.
I mean, I also think a lot of the stuff we're seeing right now is the Jim Ryan era. Like, it's just years and years ago, this stuff was greenlit. And Jim Ryan was there for the live service push. And he's not here for the live service destruction, which, hey, you know what? Shout out to Jim Ryan. He got out of there. We believe he got out of there. They who knows now? Some people might have been like, Jim, you got to go. I don't know. It's not looking like it's great for his, I guess his work now, since this is a lot. Although he did also greenlight things like Astrobot, and Helldivers 2. He was there for that. So, he got some of those right. But we're talking about like 10 cancellations. I think people making lists. It's something crazy now. So
when did that might have been on Herman actually for Astrobot. Maybe. Either way.
Oh, 3 years ago. Yeah. It was close. It was probably close. I mean, Blue Point, they said up to 2022 was on Ragnarok, and it's hard to say even before then if they were kind of like, hey, when we're done here, let's go do a live service God of War, and that might have been like 2021 or something. So I have to imagine Jim Ryan kicked up this live service push and was maybe Herman Hulse was trying to keep it going for a little while there. And then you're right. Maybe he looked around and said, man, that's not going well for us. Let's slash this stuff now. And to be honest, let's get ready for the PS6. It sounds bad, but I mean, what are you going to do? Blue Point isn't exactly working on multiple projects that we think anyway. And
it's like a perfect storm for how long it takes to make games now too. It's like the worst circumstance you could ask for.
I mean, let's see. Naughty Dog's going to be a one game studio for this generation, we think.
Well, depends on if you count cross-gen games still counting for this gen, which would be PS5 and 6. So they'll have at least 2 PS5 games probably.
Well, I assume like Intergalactic for Naughty Dog, that'll be their big one for this we assume for this generation. We're still trying to figure out when the PS6 is coming out. Some people may think it's coming out sooner than we thought. So it's
rough.
It's a lot different than it used to be when you saw Naughty Dog just throw Uncharted all over the place and The Last of Us to close out the PS3. And now it's like, oof, less and less.
Although not a unique PlayStation issue. There's a lot of studios nowadays that are like 1 or 2 games per gen.
Hey, shout out to RGG.
Yeah, well, they're flipping shit like it's
every 6 months. People were like all annoyed at them about recycling assets. And they're like, do you want us to make original assets? You want us to release games every 6-7 months? In my mind, I'm like, release a game every 6-7 months. That's fine.
They're like, yeah, we just use the same shit. Like,
although, do you remember when people noticed that Kratos and Atreus were getting in the boat the same way with Ragnarok, and it was a whole thing online? And it's like, dude, who cares? But that was a big deal. There was the level in Halo Infinite where people were shooting the fruit stands and it wouldn't move. I mean, John, it's like, first of all, why are you shooting fruit stands in the middle of team deathmatch?
John, you're describing issues that I genuinely, and I'm going to say this with my full chest, were not real issues. Anybody that actually complained about, they're not real people, and 2, if they are, they're not. You don't even give them the time of day. You don't even breathe for them. It's so goddamn ridiculous. There's no point in talking about it.
But you know these companies, these studios see this stuff on social media.
Sure. And they're laughing. They're pointing and laughing. That's what they're doing.
I'd like to think that. I would.
They are.
I'd like to think that. Some of them are fighting with people online though nowadays. So
you raise an excellent point though. Like we legitimately have to go back to like some sort of just drawing board here on like how do we spin games out in like a 3-year timetable, 3-4 years, and also make it profitable. And something's got to sort of reset here.
I said online the other day, I mean, it was like a week ago or so, I replied when someone was talking about, I think it was PO or something on Twitter. They're asking about game length, like how long should a game be? I said like 15 to 20 hours, I think is the sweet spot for a game. The 15 to 20 hour mark.
Depending on genre.
I guess like people want their RPGs to be like 50 hours long.
I would actually I would say that's fine. But I think it gets like a little much when we're talking about the expectation of like an 100-hour plus game. Like it has to be 100 plus or 200 plus, or like it has to offer this sort of endless value.
Yeah, the endless value thing is like, because that then forces usually them into open world, and then they end up making it like the open world big just to be big. Like there's no actual reason for half the land to even exist because there's nothing in it. But it's like, look at how large the area is. You can go over there for some reason. It's like, great. I'd rather this have been a streamlined. For me, I get 15 to 20 hour experience. It's just very, very good. I'd rather that.
This reminds me of that Ken Levine interview. I forget who he was speaking with about this, but touched on the development of BioShock. It was a really fascinating thing. But he talked about how BioShock was like a very corridor heavy game. It's not really open world. It's a very linear defined spaces kind of game. Like it's very corridor heavy throughout most of it. And it's like, yeah, a lot of like games in the AAA space are just so open.
Right.
Even if they're linear, there's this expectation that you have to maybe do one linear path, but then it has to open up into a really big environment, even if it's not a more traditional on paper open world. And you don't really have those sort of corridor experiences in like the very high budget space.
So, I mean, there's an illusion that's given off from those kind of experiences where because the world's big, people understand why the game then is $70.
Or yeah, there's just a perceived value. Yeah.
Yeah. Whereas anyone who was around at the time when BioShock released and played through it uh, is incredible. I haven't played BioShock in a while, and I thought about going back and playing it recently because it's like a 12, 13, 14, something like that experience. So it's not long. It's like, I wonder if it still holds up.
Oh,
I
it
feel
does.
like it does. I
It
feel
does.
like it does. It does. See?
I probably I think I played it like 6 or 7 times probably.
Okay. See, it still holds up. That's what I mean, though. Like that, if that game came out today and they were like, okay, sure, maybe it's like more modern in terms of visuals, whatever, right? But they were like, this is $70, but it's a really good experience. I would buy if I bought BioShock now for that and played through it and got that same experience, I'd be like, this is incredible. This is completely worth it, all the way through. So I feel like we sort of lost a little bit when everyone was like, we got to make our game open world. Has to be open world, has to be 80 hours long, whatever. Has to be some crazy number of things on the map to find for no reason half the time.
It had to be huge.
And then the budget gets out of control. And they're like, how did this happen? It's like, why did you make it like that? I don't understand.
There's a lot of give and pull. I can always sympathize with like the sort of customer mindset of like, well, games are expensive nowadays. Doesn't matter how much value there is. Doesn't matter about inflation. And I agree. Like no matter what, everyone has their own sort of idea of what they're willing to pay for something, and life is very expensive nowadays. I feel like it's naive to ignore that, but it's just like a lot of friction there. It's like on paper, there's just no denying how much value some games can offer. But on the opposite end, these games are just also really expensive.
Resident Evil 4 Remake is 15 hours long. Incredible experience.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. Like,
I agree. Dude, I would take tons of like 15, 20-hour games all day, every day. All day, every day.
Ratchet and Clank. How long was Ratchet and Clank? That wasn't that long. That was less than 15 hours, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's like a 12-hour game, I would say. Maybe 20.
Fun game.
Yeah. I remember like when this was like around when PS5 came out, we made the jump from 60 to 70, and that there was certainly a conversation around Ratchet and its length and paying 70 for it. So
yeah,
it's like it would probably be a while to sort of walk back on that mindset of expectation and what a game is supposed to offer at a $70 value. Even more so if there's this looming conversation of game prices going up again. So it would be, I think, an uphill battle for that for that mindset to change.
I think Callisto Protocol got kind of beaten down for its game length because it's like 10 hours long, maybe at most. And that game cost them $187 million, something like that, to make.
Yeah.
And it's not an open world game. So it's, you see those costs are like, oh man.
Yeah, it's like I was gonna say, like Callisto is probably a more modern sort of like corridor heavy, like tighter experience, and I didn't do well either.
No, that's
expectations.
It's tough. It's tough. So I don't know, because some have thought that prices need to go up again mid-gen, and it could. We've seen games go up mid-gen. Nintendo did it with Zelda. So people are looking at GTA 6 right now and like, is Rockstar just gonna point to the outfield with the bat and be like, this thing is $90. What are you gonna do about it?
I love how you said that. What are you gonna do about it?
Like, I'm like, you know what? Here's the money. I'll take that. Thank you. I mean, come on. A lot of people out there are gonna think about how much money people dump into shark cards and stuff. You think $90 anything to them? No. Like, here. Thank you. Is there a special edition for more than this?
It turns out there is. Yep.
Oh, okay, I'll buy that too. That's what's gonna happen. So, even though no one is really releasing a GTA 6, they could be like, all right, that's 90. We'll release one at 80. We're $10 cheaper. That's kind of the hope, is that for publishers and developers, apparently, according to one analyst, that they will push the envelope, and the other publishers will kind of follow behind.
Well, this is the tough thing though, John. Like at 70, like so many games are dying and failing and studios closing.
They
Like
are.
even at 70. Because
Yep.
there's also just so much market saturation. So much shit comes out. Like at a certain point, there's only so many people that are going to be buying and playing games.
You know, the other issue is these free games won't go away either. Those, they call them black hole games, like I think Matt Piscatella said that on Circan and others. They call them games just suck up all of your time. Man, we talk about money, but time is the real currency when it comes to people who like how much time they really have to play. And if they have a couple hours a week, why wouldn't they just play a free game that they don't have to throw money at and take a risk on in the first place?
That's 100% right. Like that's like Sony watches this very closely, which is just like they're not just competing against other like games that come out or other platform holders. They compete against Netflix and Hulu and Forever Games and anything that keeps you off their products. That it's fiercely competitive. There's so much saturation. Games are expensive. Consumers are very price sensitive. It's like something has to give. Something.
Yeah. And games don't even feel tangible anymore because we're getting to the era of just digital. So it doesn't even feel like you buy something physically anymore like we used to back in the day, and kind of still now, but let's be real. Let's
not be real. Let's not be real. Okay? I saw a cartridge slot on that Nintendo Switch too.
Keeping the dream alive. Keeping the dream alive there. I really do think that's something, because back in the day, man, you had to go to the store, you had to buy something physically and brought it home with you. And that, I don't know, there was a sense of value to it. And now it is kind of like everything's just being mixed and mashed in this digital age. I don't know. The free games, the paid for games start showing up the same on your dashboard. So,
hey, I need to break the seal. Need to open the plastic and give it a good. Give it a good smell. Nothing beats that fresh plastic out of the factory. Want to move on to a new story?
Sure.
We have a rumor here from one Mr. Nate the Hate, whom you might be familiar with.
I've heard of him.
Nate got a lot of attention recently, of course, because
all his WWE playtime. I know. I saw that.
To preface for viewers that for some reason don't know Nate, he was somebody recently that at least mentioned, hey, I've heard about Switch 2's hardware release. It's a hardware focused reveal coming on Thursday. What was the exact date? Whatever the day was, he got it right. He nailed it. He knew and put it out there ahead of time. So everybody
16th.
Yeah, 16th. Everybody had their eyes on Nate now. So with that in mind, now and Nate had always gotten a lot of things right. He's privy to things that go on. So usually if he says something, he's not going to say it unless he's usually got a good idea that it's probably happening. So the point here for PlayStation news is that somebody on Twitter asked him if he knows anything about a state of play. He responded with, how's February sound? That does track. 2023, the state of play was in February, I think, and then 2024 was late January. It seems like they do like to do one kind of early in the year, so I'd expect they probably will do something fairly soon.
They gotta start setting things up.
Yeah.
For the year, just in general. Yeah. I mean, you feel like they want to start at least getting the year lined up just in terms of advertising and figuring stuff out. So Ghost Yote this year.
Maybe a gameplay for Marvel's Wolverine. I mean, I think it's more of a cherry pick thing. Like we know like what they could say, but it's like, will it happen here or will it happen at SGF or the state of play before SGF or at the Game Awards? You know, so there's a lot of things. If Venom pops up, yeah, they might finally show off that. So I think that's a fairly safe rumor, but it did come from Nate. Nate got a big W recently with that Switch 2 reveal.
I wonder if we'll see Capcom at any of them either. Like, we're due for that next Resident Evil to be shown.
Yeah, you would expect it probably would show up at a PlayStation event, no?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. So, and who knows? Maybe you're watching the state of play, and all of a sudden, boom, Master Chief is on screen.
Or I was gonna say Pragmata, but that game's gone.
Microsoft shows up at the State of Play.
Well, hey, good segue. We have another rumor from Mr. Nate the Hate speaking on his channel discussing predictions for Xbox in 2025. He did mention that he's heard Halo, the Master Chief Collection, and Flight Simulator will be coming over to both PS5 and Nintendo Switch 2. And he also discussed that rumored Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion remake, probably also PlayStation as well for that, whenever that does show up. After that rumor broke out, though, we also had Jez Corden write for Windows Central, excuse me, not only corroborating that info, but he also threw in a few more games into that hat, mentioning Gears of War Ultimate Edition, Senua's Saga Hellblade 2, and Age of Mythology. And just to mention here, Nate did mention for Final Fantasy VII Remake and Rebirth, he's expecting that we'll probably jump ship to Switch and Xbox, Switch 2 and Xbox fairly soon. Probably Remake this year and then Rebirth 2026 for Xbox Series consoles, which will be good for Square since we still never really knew the conditions of Sony's agreement with Square based on how long that may or may not be. But that'd be good for Square. But yeah, this is this the year, John? Is this the year that we see like those well-known Xbox IP boot up on a PlayStation?
Sounds like 2025 is the year. It does. It does. The one I'm also curious because Starfield's now been floated as well. So I'm wondering if that shows up too.
Yeah, I was very surprised actually that Starfield wasn't like a named thing from Nate because it would seem like, because they dropped the PlayStation version probably a decent ways past when the game eventually shipped. So picking it back up and it'd probably take a little bit to get the work done on that, but you would think it would probably be lined up for this year at some point, right?
Yeah, I think Microsoft sees, a big opportunity on PlayStation's hardware, which is funny to say that. But just talk about what was happening at Sony. Microsoft, in their mind, these games they port to PlayStation is new to PlayStation, new to PlayStation owners. So, I mean, yeah, Microsoft will probably end up being the biggest publisher, one of the biggest publishers on Sony's platform this year, which again sounds weird. And Sony's probably like, yeah, we'll take 30% of all that, but it is a little funny that there's potential that 2025 could be a year where Microsoft kind of holds up PlayStation's hardware for them a bit. It's interesting the way that all works out. But I will say Master Chief Collection going to PlayStation, that is pretty big.
That's huge.
I mean, it's the console mascot for Microsoft. Been there since the beginning, and it seems like you're going to see Master Chief on PlayStation. I will say, though, those are all, for the most part, good games. Halo 4 is there, but like the other one, they're all good for the most part.
Halo 4 is.
And the multiplayer is still fun. I was just playing it the other night. Good time. I assume this is going to have I'm kind of envisioning the Minecraft treatment on these, where it's going to be a situation of crossplay, but you sign in with your Xbox account or a Microsoft Live account or something. And who knows, maybe you'll even unlock achievements on Switch 2 or something. But it'll be interesting to go through Halo and have trophies popping. I will say that.
It'll be like so weird. Like if this happens, it'll just be like crazy. It's going to be all over Twitter, people sharing screenshots and the store listing, the official box art. It'll be quite a moment in video game history to see that happen, especially that in particular, the Master Chief, like that is the most perfect Halo package to throw at a new audience.
It is.
It's all the game. Yeah. It's all here's this storyline. Here's this thing you maybe never had the chance to fully experience and insane.
I'm excited for it to happen. One, I think it'll be very, very good for Halo. I do. I think it's going to have a lot more interest all of a sudden, like overnight in the franchise for Switch 2 and for PlayStation. Everyone gets to play together. That'd be cool. And that means there'll be a lot of new people jumping on. So I can get on the PlayStation, get on the Switch 2 and get the level 50 real quick.
John's just out here looking for some easy W's.
Hey,
that's all he wants. How about these other games though? Gears of War. What about that? Gears
is people look at that as like the big Xbox game, but like I still think of Halo that way. However, Gears has interesting history because they did almost have Gears of War on the PlayStation 3 back in the day, from what I remember. Like I thought they
What
made a port of it.
they had Gears 3, if I think it's Gears 3. That was the one.
Gears, yeah.
Yeah, that
Yep.
was the one with the PS3 build. But as far as I remember, that build was always like an internal thing. That was
Hmm.
like never, and they never planned on like shipping that. Basically, it was just something they internally tested or made for
Yeah.
whatever reason. But it is out there.
Yeah, it's like Gears. I think that would be popular. I think a lot of these games will just be popular on PlayStation in general, and Microsoft will make, I think, a fair amount of money. But I guess the question people have is, will this have significant impact on their hardware business? I don't see how it wouldn't. I mean, moving these games all over the place will kind of make the Xbox look less and less appealing for most people. Then, I mean, some will like the Xbox ecosystem, the dashboard, the achievements, their purchases are there. I get it, but it will start to make the Xbox console look less and less necessary. So I do wonder the long-term ramifications from that. Short term, though, they'll just cash in and make a bunch of money from it.
Probably,
And
yeah, probably a lot.
I'm curious. I am curious, though, when they start moving all the Gears, all the Halos, everything else, the big Gears of War game that comes out next, the big Halo game that comes out next, doesn't show up with the PlayStation logo day one.
That's the big question. Once all these studios are caught up, since we're still in that like gray area of like, are they going to do the back catalog? Or are they just going to wait for the next one? Is it timed? Like, what are they? That we don't really know yet. But you would think, right, if they're going to establish Halo on PlayStation or Gears on PlayStation, it's maybe more a matter of when, not if.
Another game that I think would do really well, and I don't think it's talked about as much, is Forza Horizon, the newest one. I
Yeah,
think
why?
that moving to PlayStation would be big.
Why isn't this? Is that like is music licenses or something? Is that how is that not in here yet?
Maybe car, I don't know, maybe car license. I'm not sure, but that is, to me, that's a big one. Like if they get that over to PlayStation. I know they have Gran Turismo and Forza Horizon, way different games.
That's
And
arcadey. Yeah.
yeah, it's very fun. And I think there would be a pretty big audience on PlayStation. And in some ways that's kind of looked at also almost like live service type thing, because there's a lot of constant updates and stuff for it. So
Yeah.
I think that's just another big, and I think on Xbox had like 20 something million players at one point for it. So there's interest in it. I think it'd do well there.
Flight Simulator?
Flight Simulator is interesting because that should be an easy one to do. I don't say easy, but it a lot of it gets streamed. So when I download on the Xbox, it was 11 gigabytes, which is
Yeah.
funny. So even going to the Switch makes sense because there's no storage constraints and it's just streaming in a lot of assets constantly.
Yeah.
But again, another game that there's nothing else like that anywhere else. So
I'm really surprised Senua's Saga is like sort of stuck here or behind on it. Like how was that not? It almost seems like that's the game that you throw in with that initial 4 that they did. You know, like your
yeah, that
Hi-Fi
wouldn't
Rush and
surprise me
everything.
either. And
Yeah.
if that showed up and there's like, hey, it's just 40, $50 or whatever, that's just the way it is. And I think people would buy that too. That's the thing. Microsoft, they could just pick whatever, I think. And the shock, the announcement, whatever, would garner interest. It's like, whoa, an Xbox game, another one coming to PlayStation. I'll put this on the list. It's like,
Well,
that alone.
at a certain point, the lust is going to wear off, and then it's just going to be, oh, they're another publisher.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
they're going
That will
to enjoy this sort of like shock moment. I'm so curious as to how much Halo is going to sell on PlayStation though. That Master
Ooh,
Chief
that's a good
Collection.
question.
Like, well,
I
what
mean,
is that going to do?
millions, yes, but like, are they going to hit 5 million? Will they hit 10 million? I don't know.
You think like millions, like immediately, or
Over time, like a couple holidays.
I almost feel like it would come out and it's like, oh yeah, it did like a quarter million. And it's like, oh, that's it. But it'll be a slow burn that it climbs over that million, 2 million mark.
I mean, I would buy a physical copy for it.
Oh,
Get Master Chief on the box art with the PS5 at the top. Yeah,
I would too, but it would also feel like holding plutonium or something. It'd be very strange.
hey, you get Ryan online playing some Halo.
It'd just be so weird, man. It'd be so weird. It just wouldn't feel right to me.
No,
It wouldn't. We got a lot of really interesting things that popped up from this Shuhei Yoshida conversation. Shuhei, of course, was with PlayStation for 31 years, John. 31 years. He has officially left the company. There was like big celebration posts on Twitter. He had a going away party. There was a cake.
no cookie.
No cookie, but they gave him a bottle of champagne, it looks like, or no, it looked like champagne or something. It was very nice. Had a platinum trophy on it. His face was etched in there with a bunch of PlayStation characters. It was very cool. It's Shuhei, man. He's got to go out with a bang. Very, very lovable guy. And what's very appropriate is like the first day he leaves, he does a 2-hour long conversation with Greg Miller. It's kind of funny. They go way back. They're, good pals, and they're always talking with each other. And so they were the ones that got the big scoop here and talked with Shu for 2 hours. What's crazy to me is that they got so much out of him day one that he leaves. Day one, the guy leaves. He's spilling tea left and right, John.
Yep.
Jesus Christ, somebody pick up a towel. Get the bounty. He's spilling tea like crazy. So a lot of interesting things.
We use Downy around here.
One thing that he was asked is, what is one thing that fans get wrong about making games? And Shuhei said it was that Herman sometimes get criticized for doing too many remasters, but Shuhei had to explain. He's like, but it doesn't use up the resources people think. Sometimes they're separate teams. It's like good revenue for the studio. It helps the next thing. So I think it's always been like kind of well known, but people do tend to just overlook that. And so he acknowledged that, which was funny. He specifically said like, oh, I think because people criticize Herman for doing too many remasters. He talked
about to say too many live service games.
No, it was remasters.
That's funny.
The question was, what's one thing that fans get wrong about making games? And that was like Shuhei's response. I included this because we just talked about this earlier, and I knew you were going to get a kick out of this. Did you see where Shuhei said he was surprised by the sales of Forbidden West for Horizon?
Interesting. Go on, Ryan. Go on.
So one
Go on.
one PlayStation game he was surprised that didn't sell as well as expected. He said it was Horizon Forbidden West. He said he loved the first one. He thought the second one was bigger and better, but he was surprised that it didn't do as many units as the first one.
This explains a lot.
Here's the thing, though. I know I'm the Horizon fan. It looks like I'm defending the series like crazy. You got to understand, though. I'm genuinely surprised by that answer. Here's why. Forbidden West was only out for a year before it went to Plus, right? There's only okay, so it sold like 8 million in a year. John, you can look back at like year one sales for like Zero Dawn. That game sold like 7 million. Now, but no, genuinely, like that's kind of confusing. Like, did he think Forbidden West was going to sell like 20 million in the first year? Like that's what I'm like surprised by. That doesn't really make sense to me.
It all makes sense now. It all does.
No, it doesn't, John. I just explained.
This is perfect.
8 million in a year for Forbidden West.
It explains everything. You know why, right? All right, here's what happened. Okay?
All right, you tell me, John. You tell me.
This is the origin story for Horizon and Herman Holst's like obsession with this franchise, right? So he comes from Guerrilla, right? And they made Horizon. Big deal. It does really sells a bunch of copies and stuff, right?
Yeah.
He's all excited. Oh, we're definitely it's a trilogy. No sweat. We're definitely doing that. Maybe looking at some other stuff. We'll see. And then they're going through the sales of the first few months, and Shuhei sitting there with them. They're at like a meeting, and he just kind of looks at it and is like, thought it would have sold more than that. And then Herman Holst in his mind is like, I'll show this guy. First of all, we're getting rid of him. Second of all, I'm greenlighting every Horizon game tomorrow. And now we have like 8 of them coming out.
Sure. All right. With that weird fantasy out of the way.
He said it, not me.
No, but okay. But like, seriously though, it's a weird answer. It doesn't make sense though.
The remasters remake stuff makes sense. All of a sudden he's lost his mind when he's talking about Horizon.
No, John, really, I'm being serious though. Like, how does that? It's a weird answer. Out of 31 years at PlayStation, that's the one he picks. This has to be why they're like super careful about interviews now. Like they used to be like, so like Shuhei used to do this all the time, like with Greg and like Colin, right? Very informal interviews. They do that with Scott Rhodey all the time. Sometimes they would sit with like Jack Tretton. Like they would have very off the cuff conversations. Dude, this has to be why they don't want these guys doing this shit.
Herman Holst is like, these guys are going to keep burying Horizon over and over and over again.
Well, it just doesn't make sense. Out of 31 years, that's what you're surprised by. That's what you're surprised by. There has got to be more surprising answers than that. This game sold like more than the first game in the first year. That doesn't make sense.
Thought I would have done more. That's
It,
what he said.
like what was he thinking? What do you think it was going to do? Like 15 million? I don't get
Maybe.
that. It's so weird. So weird. Oh man, I can't get a serious answer out of you. It doesn't make sense. 31
Just
years.
buried Horizon Live on stream. That's the game.
I'm like, what? I had to like check the numbers. I'm like, it didn't do that bad.
I
Like,
mean, the out was right. I mean, I was gonna say the out was there, and he could just been like, "Oh yeah, Concord, that was crazy. Didn't think all that would have gone down." But now
well,
immediately he was like,
hold
"This
on.
Horizon game, man. Oh,
But that wouldn't surprise him. The question was, what surprised him didn't sell as well.
I would always say that game surprised me. There's no way I'd be like, yeah, we knew that thing was gonna be terrible. That's why we spent $300 million on it."
Oh, Concord, you wouldn't admit it.
No, I'd be like, no, I never saw that coming, man.
A fair point. Fair point. All right, let's move on from my copium. PS Vita. He talked about why PS Vita failed. I can't believe we're getting this one day after he leaves. So he admitted that there were several technical choices they made as a company that were not good. He said the proprietary memory cards were a mistake. He said back touch was not necessary at a cost of the hardware. He said same with the OLED. It was beautiful but expensive. He also said they which we know from the dev kits, it had video out capability. You could out it to a TV. They took that out of the retail hardware to save a few cents. Excuse me. But the biggest reason Shu feels is that they did not have the resources and the studios to support two different platforms, which that is something they've kind of touched on previously. It's just like we only have so many studios. Of course, they're going to make the PS4 games, but he did kind of like list off a bunch of bullet points for PS Vita.
Yeah, I mean that's what we've always talked about. Is just it was pretty clear they couldn't divide their time well or at all. That PS4 takes off. It's like, what are you gonna support? The system that's going across 100 million, no problem, or the system that sells slightly better than the Wii U? It's like, yeah, okay, we're gonna go with and also your games just look better on the PS4. There's so many positives to develop for that over the PS Vita. Even if you think maybe you're at a studio and you think the Vita is cool and you can make an interesting game for it, it's like, yeah, but you also like to make some money. So unfortunate for the Vita in that position because it is a really cool piece of tech. And the fact that Shuhei is even kind of putting it over like, man, we did stuff with the OLED, the back touch. Yeah, unnecessary, but cool. And it was awesome, but wasn't really great for a consumer facing product.
Yeah. I could mumble about Vita all day, every day. I do like that he mentioned back touch. I'm like, yeah, I don't know why we did that. If there's one thing I always like look back on Vita, it's not even looking back. I still love the damn thing and I use it semi regularly, but like, it's just still like, why the hell did we do that? That was like definitely kind of in my view, a waste.
Would you have traded, now looking back on it, would you have traded the OLED screen and back touch for a video out and a dock that comes with it?
A dock that comes with it. Oh, do you mean for
So
video?
that you could plug it into the TV? Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, it's funny too because it's like the Vita came out late 2011, early 2012. That still predates Switch by a decent amount of time.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
So,
6 years. Huh?
Yeah, I mean PSP had video out for God's sakes, the secondary one. So very ahead of its time. I'm not sure if video out would have really changed Vita's fortunes per se. I'm still pretty staunch in the opinion that like you address all these things, Vita's still probably not going to do good because it was
games.
Well, it was a different marketplace too.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just they did ship a lot of really good first party games the first 2 years Vita came out. People act like that didn't happen. It did. It didn't change anything. Like I think you fix all these things, right? It can use SD cards, no back touch, LCD, a little bit cheaper. Like, sure, you might be able to move like, let's say double the lifetime sales. So from 15 million to 30 million. That's still way, way under 3DS or PSP. It was just a very different market.
we started to move to cell phones and tablets being pretty mainstream and consistent. So it was you're competing there, and even Nintendo saw a pretty steep drop from DS to 3DS. So it's not like they were immune to it. It's just they went from 150 million to 75 or 76 million, something like that. So
That's
they
half. That's half.
yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So they still had, a decent enough audience to support the games that didn't cost them much to put out. I mean, the 3DS games, I'm sure budgets were much smaller than the stuff they are doing now on the Switch, but it's yeah, unfortunate for it. But the nice thing is he's pretty much telling us then that that handheld that we've heard about that's kind of in the works would make sense now to put out because they would be able to put the same games on the console and then also on the handheld. So that pretty much eliminates the biggest problem we're saying right now that the Vita faced.
Oh, 100%. I mean, to add more context to that conversation, like he immediately went into like, oh, look at Nintendo, like they consolidated into one system. He actually
Yep.
he talked. He's like, yeah, well, if you look at them, like historically, a lot of their home consoles weren't doing as well as like their portables. Like they too weren't in the best spot with like juggling studios between two. It's like always one's doing like really good, the other maybe not so much.
Yep.
So they're not exactly insulated from that, or they weren't from that problem either.
They had that one legendary 3 or 4 year span where the DS and the Wii was doing just stupid numbers.
Yeah, yeah.
And they got to the point where that time period was like 250 million systems they moved, which is insane. And they've never gone anywhere near that before or after.
Hmm.
That's crazy.
That is true. I remember that. Well, for me, that era does like in my head, like once it was like 2009 or so, it's like, oh, it's the DS era. It's at a certain point, we kind of fell off a cliff software wise.
Oh yeah, it did.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. It just completely disappeared. And I mean, I get into it, but they should have done like a Wii HD or something. Nope. They went to the Wii U and crashed and burned. So there you go.
And now we have
I mean,
Nintendo Switch 2, which, hey,
hey,
you know what? Is that not the first like big chronological named console that is now similar to PlayStation? It's crazy.
does that mean that the
Switch
Switch
2.
3 would be next?
Yeah, well, I know it's like super early to think, but in the back of my head, I'm thinking like, do they just keep going with numbers now? You got to figure it's not going to look much different from what the Switch is now, right? So,
I mean, who knows how many advancements we have, I guess, technically in 8 years. I mean, the current Switch is going to be 8 on March 3rd.
mhm.
8 years from now. Wonder what things will be like then.
It's just interesting to consider. PlayStation's the only one where it's like we do numbers, and that's why Xbox that's like on record too. Like they chose never to call it Xbox 2 because it doesn't look right next to PS3. Nintendo always
Yeah.
did new names or they would attach a super to it. So they are going to the number convention. Welcome aboard. Let's move on to Shuhei talking about PSVR 2. So Shuhei said PSVR was the most fun he had working there because of the collaboration between the game and the hardware teams. So he's talking about that PS3 demonstration that was cooked up by Santa Monica for God of War. That was when they showed it off during GDC. That was when they formally announced PSVR. And you see Shuhei with like Move controllers on his head playing God of War 3 in first person. He said it was like, really impressed him at the time. And that's what motivated him and the team to like, okay, we could probably do real VR on PS4. So he said that was like the most fun he had working there. But Greg, when mentioning that GDC panel, Shuhei referred to PSVR back then as PS1. Like if you go back to that GDC panel, he called it like, this is PS1, like we're starting over. It's VR, a very new, exciting thing. So in this conversation with Greg, Shuhei said he was sorry he was wrong about PSVR 2, that it did not become PS2. Basically saying, yeah, that whole pitch I had didn't really work out that way. And then
He basically said the PSVR 2 did not light the market on fire.
Hey, Greg said like what went wrong, and Shuhei's like, let's continue.
Hey, you know what's funny? They just this was a question right after why the Vita didn't work, and it's like, oh yeah, we couldn't split our teams between these platforms, and then it's like, well, why didn't PSVR 2 work? Next question. I wonder what happened.
Yeah, you know what though, man? I mean, if the point I made for Vita, like I like again, I'm very staunch on that point. I'm more so on PSVR 2. it's a VR problem, unfortunately. You throw a lot of money at this, you throw all the teams at it, maybe you make the headset a little cheaper. It's just not moving the needle on the VR market. It's just not, dude.
What's the one game they made for the PSVR 2?
Horizon Call of the Mountain.
Hey, got a Horizon game. Let's they should have done is pitch some live service games for VR2. That might have worked.
Yeah, because that would have done any better.
They would have gotten some money out of Sony, gotten something going in development.
And
Yeah.
what's frustrating is like at least do some more second party experiences. We had the first contact game with Firewall Ultra, but I would have liked to see a little bit more second party experiences. I don't expect first party to be messing around with VR, but like could have kept one studio around to do a PSVR 2 game, maybe do more second party stuff, but it's pretty clear where their intentions were, which sucks because like the headset's really good.
I think when I saw that Batman Arkham Shadow game get announced for Quest 3, and I realized, wow, Sony must have something happened here. Sony didn't want to do this or passed up or missed out or something. Those kind of things get announced. I'm like, okay, yeah, maybe they're not that into VR now. I don't know. It seems weird when you see that get picked up by Meta for Quest 3 when the video game company, Sony, PlayStation is like, not for us. It seems weird, right? So like when you see that announcement, I don't know. It's unfortunate for PSVR 2, but you're probably right. It's just a VR problem. It's not. I just don't think VR ever really took off like a lot of the tech pundits were thinking it would.
Well, it's like you said, the Batman game, like, yeah, PSVR 2 missed it, but like that announcement for everybody was like, it's VR. Like,
yeah, no, it was.
Yeah, it's like, it's a VR problem. It sucks. I love VR, man. I think it's really fun, engaging. And
They
PSVR
mentioned
2
a game in there, Ryan.
What game?
That they played. I think it's Before Your Eyes. Is that what it is?
So Shuhei talked about his two favorite games, which funny enough, these are my two favorite games as well so far in the headset, which is Synapse and Before Your Eyes.
I have not played Before Your Eyes, but they made it sound pretty good. And I looked it up. It's like an hour and a half, 2 hours long.
John, for the love of God, if you're gonna ever genuinely listen to my advice, play that game.
Okay.
Just set an hour aside. It's beautiful.
Oh,
and Synapse is good too. Synapse is from Endreams, because they're doing a lot of VR stuff nowadays. Endreams used to be the team that made a bunch of like PlayStation home cosmetics. That's like what they did for the longest time. Then they moved on to VR, and Synapse is really cool. It's a roguelite, which you've got like first person sort of almost like fire hot vibe or super hot, not fire hot, super hot vibes where you're like shooting guns and doing these crazy moves, but it's a roguelite and it's pretty short too. It's only like 5 hours to see it all the way through, but that game makes you feel like a supernatural spy or something. It's really awesome.
Okay. Maybe I'll check out I'm looking at it now, Before Your Eyes. Yeah. I'll check this one out.
There's good stuff on the headset for sure. Unfortunately, it didn't really pan out. I'm very curious if they'll do a PSVR 3. Even if
I assume not. You think it will?
Well, it just as a sort of like it's an established technology, it's like if they can make money on it, if studios can still make money on the headset, I mean, I would presume there'd be absolutely zero expectation of like first party support for it, but they're established in the space. I mean, I wonder if there would be a sort of simpler path of like putting out a third gen headset with just updated lenses and the tracking solution standardized, so it's not going to be quite the hurdle that say 1 to 2 had. Another topic you touched on, where's Bloodborne? So he has a personal theory, which he wanted to make that very clear, that he's not releasing secrets or anything. He says he has a personal theory. And he said that Miyazaki really loved Bloodborne a lot, but he's so successful now. He's so busy. He probably wants to do it, but he doesn't want anybody else to touch it. That's what he thinks is going on with Bloodborne. And I would say that's plausible. It's still a very puzzling thing. Sony owns the IP. If they ever wanted to do something with it, we all know they could have in theory, but I mean, maybe that's it, right? Like you just don't want to like sour that relationship with the creator, like we work on this game. and we can't work on it right now. So that means that's why nothing's happening with it.
It feels like the simplest answer, so it's probably the correct one. But I mean, it's also possible that they have been working on Bloodborne and it could be out next year at this rate. And she was just like, I'll throw them off their trail right now. They just, come on, they've done so many references to this game just randomly. End of the recent thing with PlayStation where they put out the 30-year anniversary of Bloodborne, finishes it out. Randomly, they had which social media account this week said something about Bloodborne for some reason.
Oh, well, that happens all the time, like PlayStation Netherlands or Ireland or something. It's always like some random PlayStation regional account that mentions Bloodborne.
But like, why? Did they make a post about Legend of Dragoon this year? A big remake coming at some point, right? So
they actually might have, though, because you only hear about the Bloodborne ones. Those accounts are around. Like, they always, it's not like PlayStation Ireland only tweets every 6 years to say Bloodborne.
Yeah, I guess. It does seem weird to just randomly see that pop up, these coincidences all the time for Bloodborne, and it's almost like they're trying to keep it in people's minds so that eventually it could. Look, I saw Final Fantasy VII Remake, like that actually was a thing. Finally, I just can never rule out Bloodborne.
I wouldn't rule it out either, but it's like the company never forgot the IP. I think the entire way through, they've always sort of like done what you're implying, like a tweet here, appreciation post here, merch here. Like they've never like ignored it, but it's like at a certain point, we always thought, oh, here's the patch, here's the port, and it just never happened. Yeah. I would love to think it is happening. Yeah. Well, you're not. It's not getting a patch. It's not getting a patch because they want to sell it to you again.
I know.
Ain't no way you're getting a patch.
Most people want to buy it as well. So
hey, and we're still shocked they have not done that. But that's his personal theory.
If only they had a studio that was good at remakes and remasters. Oh well.
Hey, I don't know.
Did I say Bloodborne? I meant live service Bloodborne.
It's one of the most.
There's Blue Point.
Like, just how have they not done this? I don't know. It makes no sense. No sense at all. But maybe that is it. Maybe there really is a sort of respect thing. Miyazaki can't work on it, so we just have to sit here and make posts on Twitter.
Suffering from success. There's too many copies of Elden Ring or Armored Core or whatever he puts out. There's just too many copies being sold. Too much money coming in.
That would be something if that's true. It really is. Like, they just, if Miyazaki can't do it, then we can't do anything with it.
Yeah.
Could be contractual too. Maybe there is some kind of clause in there that says like only From touches it. You never know.
You're right. It could be. It's just, I hope they get it figured out. I do. Maybe
next year. Maybe next year. Maybe the year after that.
PS6 coming up.
Maybe the year after that. Hey, speaking of, why don't we touch on a PS6 rumor?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because we do have those now.
Finally.
Yeah, finally. This kind of runs deep. Yeah, it's like a little mix here of things that popped up. This initially was spotted on the Chip Hell forums. There was a rumor that was posted about AMD's hardware roadmap. The claim here is Zen 6 will utilize 3D stacking for improved performance on a 3-nanometer process. And their flagship GPUs will be called UDNA instead of RDNA 5. We heard that before. Set to launch in the second half of 2026. And Sony's future consoles will utilize those 3D stack designs, but the process size is unknown since there would be, 3 or possibly a cost-optimized 4-nanometer process, which the story was then posted to NeoGAF, and that's where Kepler L2, the one user that previously leaked AMD roadmap details, and they more recently put out PS5 Pro details that were correct. They mentioned that PS6 design, the hardware design is complete, not the physical design, mind you, but they're in like pre-silicon validation, Jesus. Which as of right now, they claim AMD's Zen 6 design is complete, and some of it is on a 2-nanometer node. and the A0 tape out is scheduled for late this year. Now, tape out is basically the final design stage for a PCB. So Kepler says Sony's usual cadence from tape out to release is 2 years. So if it follows the PS5 schedule, then that would mean the first party teams are going to have dev kits in the first half of 2026. And this console could be expected in late 2027. So that is sort of a brief breakdown. I'm sure a lot of that might go over some people's heads with just the hardware roadmap, but like the UDNA thing we heard before, as far as like what they're going to call their GPUs, and really not that long from now. So assuming they make a formal announcement about this stuff's going to look a lot more believable.
It's a 7-year cycle. Then that's what we had 2013, 2020. So we were kind of saying 2028 because during that FTC stuff with Microsoft, we kind of expect Sony to be around 2028.
Yep.
And we immediately thought holiday 2028, but technically they could have been like, hey, they just launched 2 months ago in like November of 2027. Now it's 2028, and they're pushing games out. So I guess that is in a way lining up, but it's weird to think, Ryan, because that means that in 2 years we would start hearing Sony talk about the PS6, like starting up their marketing campaign. Beginning of the year, they would do the thing where they take the PS5 and they put a little line down like it's PS6, that kind of thing. And then they would spend the year, just dropping hints and Wired articles or whatever here and there in interviews. And then we get to the blowout and boom, by the end of 2027, we could have PS6 systems in our house playing them. It's interesting to think that we would be actually that close right now. If that were
very, very close. I mean, what's really going to open up is like when first party teams get it. Now, first party, like when they get dev kits, usually they're still pretty locked down as far as like secrecy, because they're like the most trusted. It goes through lawyers. It's a very, very controlled thing. So we might hear something out of first party, but once it gets to like third party, that's where like the floodgates open. That's expected, I believe they said either the second half of 26. No, actually the first half of 27, if anything. So it might still be a bit until like that stuff really starts coming out, but we're clearly getting all this stuff about hardware, which is insane. But you're right. We're going to have that slow burn of like exactly how they did a console reveal prior, which is like they won't show a box, but initially they'll maybe the PS blog. You never know.
Yeah. It's got it. I feel like people aren't in a rush to hear about the PS6 right now.
No.
I see it a lot because I brought it up in a few episodes for news and stuff. People are like, we're talking about the PS6. Well, I feel like the PS5 just started. It's like, well, technically we're more than 4 years into the generation now, and 7 to 8 years. Remember with I feel like it was with it was with 360 and PS3. People were like, this generation will never end. My gosh, how 7 or 8 years is crazy. Because before, the original Xbox was 2001 to 2005. It was 4 years. We'd right now be getting our Xbox 360 in this generation, It's funny how much, it's funny how much longer these cycles have gotten now, to where it's like 7 or 8 years that's not long enough. And it's just because, as we've said, I feel like multiple times in this episode, these games take forever to make.
That's it. Like that's why PS3 and 360 did feel so long. I guess more so 360 because that was like a year gap from PS3. But like, you had whole franchises start, die, and new ones begin all in a cycle. It's like by your fourth Naughty Dog game, you're like, I want to see a PlayStation 4. Yeah. And like the time's the same, but you don't have that release cadence. It's that perception. Time, John, time's an illusion.
No.
It's all about how it feels. All about how it feels.
That's the next generation leap I hope happens. And it's one we wouldn't really see till a few years in, but like they figure out the development stuff in the background that makes it so it doesn't take forever for these games to come out. That's my biggest hope. I don't know if it's AI related or tools or SDKs or something, but man, they got to figure this out.
I think it's still going to be such a long time till that ever does get figured out. Like we're just going to get PSX, and then it's going to be the same cross-gen stuff. You'll start seeing game announcements as cross-gen, but they'll start showing PS6 footage. You're going to have your comparisons show up on Twitter, and people talk about how there's no difference or there is a difference, and you'll have Digital Foundry break down 17 versions of a game and talk about why one is slightly better than the other, and that's the new world we live in. That's it.
You think people will have 8K sets by 2027?
No.
That seems like the most
Not a lot.
superficial jump you would have for next gen. It's just 8K now, but
I would assume it's lighting, like path tracing.
that's true. You're right. It could be that, but I just don't. I'm not in a rush to be like, oh, I got to get 8K. It's like, I don't know. Eventually, someone has to push the market for it. But maybe you're right. Maybe it's more about ray tracing becomes more meaningfully integrated in these games. Like I keep looking at Half-Life 2 RTX. There's screenshots and some video for it. It looks like a legitimately different game, and that might be a way that you can see some of these older titles get like faux remasters or remakes kind of on the fly, done through just like artificial intelligence. And maybe they could apply that, Ryan, to the PS2 games that we're getting in like premium and stuff. PS1 games, all of a sudden they have like ray trace reflections and they clean it up and it looks like a whole new game.
Yeah, I think
Like
there's definitely like avenues to explore here. I mean, this dials back to that Mark Cerny presentation. He's like, rasterization is just not going to see a huge jump. We're looking at ML and we're looking at ray tracing. So it's like lighting's probably going to be a huge deal. Remember that Unreal 5 presentation early on for PS5 where they showed off
through and
Lumen and Nanite, and like that looked super impressive with the what are they called, the mega textures or something. It's like the whole vault and library now, but it's like that stuff is like super resource intensive on the game and your frame timing, and so it's like there's so much room here as far as like getting that technical demonstration on this new hardware at a decent resolution, at a decent frame rate. It's a lot of these sort of superficial things, but in the console space, it's going to be really nice to have, what feels like a high-end PC for hopefully not that much money, ideally.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's where it'll go, but it's going to be a lot of cross-gen still, I think.
I think you're right.
Well, I did want to talk about this real quick. We have been keeping up with some PlayStation Productions news. Did you see the Until Dawn movie trailer?
I did.
Doesn't sound like you're a fan.
Look, I did ask you how are they going to make it so that it's because my understanding Until Dawn, the biggest thing there is it is like you choose your own path as you go through who lives, who dies, right, based on your actions. I guess the idea for them was let's make this like Groundhog's Day kind of.
Groundhog's Day.
Did it look like like Until Dawn to you?
It's Until Dawn in name. I do appreciate the I guess how they're trying to incorporate the game's multiple paths into a static experience. Because we're not even describing it yet, but like the recap, obviously, for the trailer, like what happens is the kids go to not a cabin, but a house. It looks like the suburbs, for crying out loud. But they go to a house, they get killed right away by like a killer or something. They like the time rewinds, they wake up. And so it's like a reset situation over and over. They keep getting killed, but every time they wake up, it's like a different villain, like a different horror genre kills them for the night. And so they have to figure out how to make it until dawn. So I can kind of see what they're doing there with making it similar to the game. Having said that, I guess I would have liked it to be like a singular villain the whole way through, which would have been the same one as the game. And so it's like them trying to navigate deaths from the same villain. Doing like different villains over and over gives it a sort of like, I don't know if you ever saw like Cabin in the Woods. It's kind of like that movie almost, if you know what I mean. Or it would be maybe too similar to that one movie called Happy Death Day, where the girl dies on her birthday and she has to figure out who the killer is. But every time she dies, she wakes up. So she's still chasing the same villain. You know what I mean? It's like, do that, but make it the game's real enemies, which I don't want to spoil.
I've seen that one.
I don't want to spoil it. It's in the trailer too. Like they did include the game's like real enemies in the trailer.
Yep.
I guess if you never played the game, you wouldn't know which one it is, but I would have thought, okay, stick that in there and then make it all the way through.
Wait, did you like the trailer? That you're all right with it? What do you think?
No, I didn't hate it. It's just like, yeah, it's Until Dawn a name. I get what they're trying to do. It just looks like maybe like a fun horror movie that kind of has Until Dawn elements. I'll go see
Okay.
it. I'll go see it.
I'm
I've
not the
missed.
big Until Dawn guys. That's what I was asking.
Well, yeah, I mean, I missed I didn't watch like the Gran Turismo movie. I didn't care for the Twisted Metal show.
Oh, the Gran Turismo movie was good.
I know, but I just, like I know what the real. I know it's a
Really?
real life. I know it's a real life story, but I just didn't care to go see it.
It's on
Same.
Netflix, I think now.
Oh, it's on Netflix now. I don't have Netflix.
That's where I watched it. I watched it on Netflix.
Why? What? I just have no want to watch it though. There's no desire.
Oh,
This
it was good.
I'd go see this. I would go see.
There,
This.
there was a PS3 in the movie, Ryan.
I'd hope so. They were supposed to be playing Gran Turismo.
It's based on him winning the PS3.
It
The only
kinda just
issue I
like-
had with the movie, Gran Turismo, was every single race was like that dramatic movie race. Every single time.
where like you can't tell what the fuck's happening.
It's like photo finish. It's like, great, we just had 4 of these. Okay. That's the only thing. I get they were trying to make it like, just that drama sort of aspect. Whereas if they won 18 car links, it's like, oh, I wonder who's gonna win this. But they tried to, play it up to be a movie, like dramatic and stuff. But it was still, I thought it was fun for what it was.
How much of like the Jan playing the games? How much like was that in the movie? Was it just like a 5?
I'm actually playing the games. It was
Yeah,
early on.
So was it like a 5-minute thing, or did it kind of build up and then?
It built up. They had some pretty cool, like it built up. So it started obviously with the main character playing the game in his own room, and then eventually working up to where he's going out to like these arcade kind of setups, and then he does the tournament, and then he gets in, and then when they actually get to the training facility, it's just real cars. But they did this these cool transitions where he's in the car driving, and he's like, I remember this from the game. So it almost like unpacks the car, puts him in his room, and he's driving that area. Then it packs him back into the car, and then he does all the stuff that he did from the game in real life.
That's
kind of cool.
That's pretty sweet. I'd watch that part, and then I'd
I mean, it has decent enough pacing, and it has the whole setup of the dad and the mom who's like, "You'll never be something." He's like, "I'll show you," and then he goes. It does all that
stuff. Oh, okay. Well, but I gotta know what model PS3 was on there.
It was a slim model.
God damn it!
It was a slim, I believe.
No fat. No fat.
No. You'd be able to hear that one. They had to keep it the slim.
That's fine. Pipe it in. Although I guess if you want to be story accurate, you'd have to ask like the real Jan what's his name? Jan Mardenborough? Whatever.
Oh gosh.
What console did he play on? Then put that in the movie.
Yeah, I feel like it was a slim PS3 if I'm not mistaken that he was playing on.
That's horseshit. Should have been a 60 gig CCHA01, but what do I know? Oh boy. Oh, that's all the stories. You want to go into PSX?
Actually, it might have been a CO4.
Oh, really?
Might have been like a PAL PlayStation. European PlayStation.
I mean, it would be a PAL model, yes.
Yeah. I still feel like it was a slim PS3.
Okay. So you don't even like really know.
No, I'm saying if that was the case, it was the fat model. I guess it'd be the CO4.
You said there was a PlayStation in there.
It was. But I mean, yeah, there's a bunch of PlayStations in there. Somebody's got the fat model, okay? Somewhere out there in the movie.
Oh, slim. I want it to be like The Last of Us Part 2, where like there's multiple fat PS3s in abandoned homes. That was awesome.
That was actually pretty fun to find.
It was really cool. Every time I found one, I took a screenshot.
Did you? Every time? Was that? I can't believe there's no trophy. You should have got a trophy for finding each one snapshot.
You really should have. It was disappointing. You want to move on to PSX? Go and give it to you.
All right, let's hear it.
All right, so we actually touched on this earlier, but for PSX, go and give it to you. The part of the show where we look at PlayStation history, maybe a nostalgic point in time, a little factoid, something you didn't know about PlayStation. With console reveals, right? We just had the Switch shown off, Switch 2. Big deal. It's always exciting when we get new hardware, have a formal announcement. But historically with PlayStation, they do this in a very weird way, right? You touched on it with PS5, which is they don't show a box right away. So I wanted to reflect on the PS4 one. Do you remember this, John, where they had the February 20th, I want to say it was, New York reveal. It was a big thing, the PlayStation New York event. And people went there. You know, Mark Cerny took the stage. That was the first time Mark Cerny really had a big presentation. Well, Andy House initially took the stage, introduced Mark Cerny, talked about the DualShock 4, showed off the camera, all this stuff, right? Then studios came up. Here's a game we're working on. Here's an announcement. Here's a game announcement. Here's all this third-party support. It was a very long presentation. PS4. Then they didn't show a console. And the internet like took issue with that. Like they took serious issue with a console reveal without the console. And the damn thing is, John, that is how they always did it. That's how that's how PlayStation always revealed consoles.
I'm busy getting the recap right now, Ryan.
The recap? Oh my god. You asshole.
I typed it in and I was like, let me check this out. First thing on Google. Boom. 11 years ago.
You dickhead. Look at my Wii. Look at my iPod Nano.
Oh, there it is. Yeah. Check that out.
Man, I had a lot of hair back then.
I just we all did. I just thought it was funny. I was like, I lined it up. I was like, oh look. Oh wait, that's right.
All right, so on this episode of PSX Gonna Give It To You, we're going to talk about Ryan Lohr. That's me. That's I don't know. That's just like a recap. But that's not even an LTPS episode.
Wait, hold on. What kind of TV is this back here?
That's a Bravia.
Oh,
it's like a KDL something. I'm sure obsolete Sony could tell me.
You really are the Apple guy. Look at this, dating all the way back 11 years. Got the iPad, got the iPhone back here.
I liked all their handheld. I still had a Windows back then though. I still had a PC for quite a bit.
Okay, I threw you off. Continue.
Well, now you stole the whole. Now it's about me all of a sudden. The point I want to make, John, if you remember, is that they did a console reveal without the console. Do you recall this?
Well, I recall the controller.
Oh, but you don't remember the narrative around it?
No, I just remember the controller being held up by Sony.
Oh.
For some reason, that's always ingrained in my mind.
Yeah, well, that was the thing. Like a lot of people back then were like, "What the hell? A console reveal without a console?" This was like early Twitter. It was only around for, I don't want to say a few years, but like not a lot of people were on back then. But like that was a thing. A lot of people back and forth saying, "How do you?"
This is where we saw the Unreal Engine tech demo too.
Yeah, they had that on there. Oh, this was also where they showed off Knack. Knack was actually the first PS4 game we ever laid our eyes on.
I do remember Knack.
Yep. Because that was Mark Cerny's first game that he was directing, and he segued right into that. And they also showed PS Vita remote play and everything. But it's just like the concept of a console reveal without the console. But like the ironic thing is, like, I guess that's the difference between the internet era that we are now in, because like PS3 and under, it was a very similar thing. When they announce consoles, they do like tell people like, yes, we are working on the next PlayStation, and they'll sort of drip feed all these things. They'll talk about the hardware. They will officially name it at a certain point, but they'll do a lot of stuff before they show you the actual console. So by the time they got to PS4, everyone was like, what the hell? Even though they always did it that way.
They showed the DualShock 4, of course, as I mentioned, with Sony holding it up. They showed Killzone, Infamous. They did Drive Club, Watch Dogs.
Yeah,
that's a good one. Destiny, Knack, and then The Witness. And you're right, there's no console. They did show off the camera, as you mentioned. Again, the DualShock 4, there it is again. But you know what? Now I think about this, after what we just saw recently with Nintendo, I don't mind the games getting shown first.
Is that because everyone's talking about like the Switch 2 hardware, and then it's like the conversation isn't about like the software?
It's a bit of a contrast to this, clearly, but yeah, kind of, because in this case, if you have the PlayStation 5 shown, let's say they did that trailer where it was the PS5 itself, the hardware, and then no games, you'd be like, okay, well, I mean, it looks different, I guess, interesting. Even if they outline an accessory or the OS or something, it's like, oh yeah, this looks kind of cool. But if you came away from it and they announced like 6 or 7 games, and some of them look legit incredible, like Killzone, Shadowfall, Infamous, Our Drive Club looked insane on stage here. I feel like there'd be a lot more excitement, a lot more stuff to talk about. So I actually don't mind games first. Here's the box later.
Well, the contrast is interesting. The thing is, like, what was very timely back then too was Xbox One, because the thing is, Sony got out first. They revealed PS4 before Microsoft revealed Xbox One. And for Microsoft, like, this was kind of documented over time too, but like their thought process behind the scenes was, let's do a real console reveal. We'll show the console. And it was very purposeful. When they did the reveal, within like a minute, Don Matrick pulls off that veil and they just do these sweeping shots where you see only the box. And then, but the rest of their presentation, obviously we know, had no games. It was mostly like TV, here's the OS. Well, here's Call of Duty. We'll show Call of Duty. But it's like, I guess it's funny how like that has always been the methodology for PlayStation, like prior to 4 even, because again, like the history lesson here is like everyone kind of criticized Sony for like showing a console without showing the box. But like 3 under, it was the same deal. They would just like talk about it. Here's what it's called. Here's like what games look like, but they'll never like they'll wait till the end to show you like what the box is going to look like. And funny enough, that's the same thing with PlayStation 5. They did not show that box right up until not the end, but like we got the name. Close. Yeah, the name, blog post, Wired articles, UI, handful of game announcements, and then finally they showed you the box. So that's always been the methodology, and I would assume that's probably what they'll do for PlayStation 6 as well.
Wow, yeah, I'm just looking through the blog poster. It's so funny.
You're just actually reminiscing at this point.
For this, this is where they show the Unreal Engine tech demo and stuff. Yeah. What a time though where knack was one of the big forward-facing games for a generation. That's so funny. Sony was so happy with that.
Some would argue that that's what people want. Like, oh man, be bold. Here's the first game you show off, and it's a platformer, right?
You know what? The PlayStation 6 shows up, okay, because we're kind of thinking of like some of these devs in like reset mode right now. If the first game they show with the PS6 is Astrobot 2, that is an incredible move. I'd be all about that.
Yes. I would want one more Astrobot on this console before.
Okay. Either they get it wouldn't shock me that's cross-gen though, to be honest, like Astrobot, like I could see that. So
yeah,
but like if Astrobot, the character, introduced the PlayStation 6 and that was the first game we saw for it, I'd be like, yeah, that makes sense.
I would almost say like that might be like a thing they definitely lean into. Like have a little Astrobot character, like even as just like a joke, like during a state of play or whatever event they do, like he walks out and then he pulls up PS6 out of his pocket or something. I don't know, something cool like that.
Need an Astrobot Easter egg on the motherboard too.
Ooh, that'd be pretty cool. Print it right on the PCB. Yeah,
just a little Astrobot symbol in that. That would be cool. You find an Astrobot in your PlayStation 5. That'd be fun.
Well, he does live there, and he's gonna clearly he's been saving up, getting a new house soon, getting a new ship.
That would be awesome if they did that. If they put a little Astrobot in there, but yeah, I mean the PS4. This was the right move. I mean that's the thing. Back then, Sony made a lot of right moves. History shows that. So,
but that's the point though. One would argue at the time that it was a silly thing. How could you do a console reveal and not show a console?
No, that's true. That's true. I mean, it's just hindsight makes this very easy now, but you're right, because I think we were pretty curious again after how long we had been stuck in that generation with the PS3 and technically the 360 adjacent to that. We were just ready to see a new piece of plastic. That was it. We were just ready, and they didn't show it until a few months later, where not only they show up, but then they slapped around Microsoft with the price point.
I think it was Shuhei actually that at some point in time, shortly after the console, I think came out, he said like that really surprised the team back then. They're like, what? Like, yeah, we'll show it to you at some point. Like they were genuinely taken aback by the criticism of like, how did you do a console reveal without the console? They were like, what? We always did it this way. Like, relax. Well, it's going to look like a box.
Yeah.
You'll see it at a certain point. And then they had like a big reveal at E3, which the E3
Yeah.
reveal was crazy. It's like big lights shining on Andrew House as he's holding the damn thing.
Although to be fair, it is interesting to see what Sony comes up with because they come up with some interesting looking home consoles.
I agree. They do go out of their way to make sure it looks very unique.
Yeah, it's like the PS6. It'll be very interesting to see what that looks like, when it comes out. So, I don't know. It'll be fun. The PS5 did kind of set the bar high on the weirdness factor, but I got faith in them that they can break through that glass ceiling too.
Okay, let's do it. I'm ready. Show me something weird. Show me some weird plastic.
That's still good. What an interesting moment in time that 2013 year was.
It's very different.
Man,
That's all I got for you, John.
hey, it's a fun episode. Episode 15. You made it all the way through too, by the way.
Yep. Now I'm gonna unwrap this next cough drop.
The cough drops did not turn on you. That may or may not be from the 90s for all we know.
Well, I only had one at the start, so I'm dying over here.
Okay.
This tickle in the back of my throat's doing me in good here.
Well, thanks everyone for joining us. I had a lot of fun here today in episode 15. And we'll be back in a couple of weeks. That'll put us into we'll be into February then already.
Indeed we will.
It's fast. Time's moving quick already. But we'll be back then. Talk PlayStation. We'll see you guys next time.